City of Palm Coast City Council business meeting. And today is Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024. It is 1:31 p.m. and we are in the community wing of City Hall. And we will begin with, ordinances of the first read, agenda letter G, item number 6. And Council, if you would read that in for me, please.
Ordinance 2024-XX amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 6 Retirement, Division 2, Volunteer Firefighter Retirement System and Trust Fund.
Chief, thank you for your patience.
Yes, sir. Kyle Berryhill, Palm Coast Fire Department, and here today to present the first read of this ordinance. Let's just give you a very quick overview of how we got here. In the early 2000s, the city established a volunteer firefighter pension trust fund, which also establishes the Volunteer Firefighter Pension Board as part of our city ordinance. That fund was entirely funded through a state revenue that was dedicated to police and firefighter pensions. It's Chapter 175 of the state statute. Over the years, we've done a few modifications to that fund, but this year, the city and the union entered into negotiations and came to an agreement to ratify an article on retirement in May and June of this year. Per that article, the professional firefighters and the city agreed to work cooperatively together to bring forth an ordinance and to implement the new plan. And essentially, this ordinance sets up a second tier of the retirement plan for our professional firefighters or our career firefighters in accordance with Florida State Statute Chapter 175. And also, there's some specific things, so it's always all in accordance to that statute, but there's some specific things that are part of how we set it up, pertinent to the fact that we're establishing that we have active existing firefighters today. Some of those things include there's no change to the pension for the volunteer firefighters. There's an elimination of a volunteer share plan that was a result of overfunding from that state revenue dollars that will contribute to our ability to fund the career firefighter side. Some of the very basic tenets of this plan is a 10-year vest, the ability to purchase up to 15 years of credited service for existing members, a mandatory 5% contribution, 25 years of service or 55 years of age plus 10 years, and a 3% multiplier caps on overtime. There's several other instances, and additionally, our existing career firefighters have a one-time opportunity to choose to enter this plan or not. For full disclosure, I am by statute eligible for that. My wife and I believe that we're not going to be doing that, but I just wanted to disclose that as well. And so today we're here because we're in the next step of a multi-step process, and there's a few steps left. I want to let you know where we are today with what we're asking and what's next. So if you are to ratify this ordinance today, the pension board has already authorized funds to perform an impact statement from the pension fund that would give us actual dollars as to how much this costs from our budgetary standpoint. If you remember, during our budget process, there was an asterisk under the fireside, which there was some mystery associated with to what this is actually going to cost. And so that will take the cost estimates, and there are estimates provided in that budgetary packet. For fiscal year 25, we budgeted $1.264 million for retirement. In addition to, we estimated that we would receive $600,000 from the state fund. For perspective on what our actuals were in fiscal year 24, it was $1.22 million in retirement. Then we adjusted our estimate. We initially estimated, I think, $350,000. We adjusted it to $526,000, but we actually received from the state funding $827,000, which is about a little over 12.5% of the total firefighter salary for that plan. After we get those numbers together with the impact statement, the proposed plan with the impact statement goes to the state's Chapter 175 office for review to ensure it's compliant with state law. And then once all of those things are together with hard numbers, we come back to you for a second read. While that's also going on, staff is going to work through some administrative changes in order to be prepared to execute the ordinance. It includes making some adjustments to our current 401A retirement plan, and just setting up some things in payroll, different, kind of administrative tasks and functions. So we anticipate a January target of when this will begin. Any questions?
I have none.
So this is just you're looking for a go to get us hard numbers that you'll come back to us with?
No, sir, this is the first read of the ordinance. So we have to amend the ordinance because we had an ordinance that established the Volunteer Firefighters Pension Fund.
Okay.
Then in order to amend it, we have to, have an ordinance to amend. In order to get the numbers, the ordinance has to say how the plan is defined, right? So we'll take what's happened today. We worked through this. It's common practice for us to, and for other municipalities of our size, to have a specific attorney who's an expert on pensions. So although Mr. Duffy did help us review that, we worked together with them to develop this ordinance specific to this very narrowly tailored area.
So, we're not voting blind on the numbers. We kind of have a ballpark.
There's, yes, sir. So the actuarial data that I have seen
Right.
shows, and there is some, there's a assumed rate of return that the Volunteer Pension Board is mandated by the state to set. So we don't really have influence on that board. I spoke with our consultant who helps to work through and manage some of those processes from the Florida League of Cities. And the number that I saw for what it could cost, it would be an assumed rate of return that's worse than what is normal for other pensions in the state. I think there's a very, very good chance that what we've budgeted for this will be more than we need for the first year of funding for the pension.
Okay.
But that being said, we're bringing you real numbers before you say the final yes.
Oh, that was really my question. Okay,
Yes, sir.
good. Question?
Nope, I was going to dilute it down to simply what you just said. Thank you. Yeah.
That's what I was looking for. Other questions or discussion? We've kind of been down the road on this for a while.
Yeah.
I have a question. Under section 2-532, pre-retirement death, it states that members vested are eligible for retirement if a Tier 1 member having at least 10 years of credited service dies prior to retirement. His or her beneficiary is entitled to the benefits otherwise payable to the firefighter at early or normal retirement age. Is that for any death or line of duty?
I believe that's for any death. I can double check with our attorney. That's straight out of the statute. That's language associated
Okay.
that's like mandatory language associated. My belief is that if you've reached the minimum vesting age, that the family has some entitlements associated with a death there.
Okay. If you could just get me that.
Yes, ma'am,
statutory language.
absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Otherwise, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Let me open the item up to the public. Oh,
No questions. Okay, just want to make sure.
Are there any members of the public that would like to? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Council and City Manager. I just want to thank you. It's been a extremely long road to get here, but we've done it. I think this is historic for Palm Coast Fire Department. Since the incorporation of the city, I think this is the biggest change to our department. So I just want to thank you for getting here. I want to thank Lauren for stepping in last minute to help facilitate this. Chief Berryhill, Renina. I just want to thank everybody on the team. So I appreciate it.
We appreciate your comment. Anyone else with a comment? Close public comment, come back to the dais. I would ask for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Seconded.
Councilwoman Pontieri has made a motion to approve. Councilman Clufus has seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Chief, thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to item number 7. Short-term vacation rentals. Counselor, would you read that in for me?
Ordinance 2024-XX, amending City of Palm Coast Ordinances, Chapter 17, Community Development, as amended to add Article 5, short-term vacation rentals.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Jason DiLorenzo, Chief of Staff. Have a short presentation for you. From the last time you heard this ordinance, These are the requested changes that you asked for and we updated in the ordinance. So we reduced the maximum occupancy to 10. We allowed for parking in the garage. For the responsible party, we increased it to 3. For background checks, we required it for the person booking the unit only. We updated the effective date to allow us time to put our process in place. And we restricted recreational trailers parking in the driveway, which I think Marcus would just like to touch on a little bit.
Yeah, so I know our last discussion with this, you asked me to look in to see what options we have with that. I found a couple ordinances that had what I added. I added in there saying that they can have a trailer in there if they're cleaning the trailer, unloading, or uploading, but it can't be there permanently parked. I looked at that, hey, we need to have a purpose of why we're doing this. And so with enforcement of our current code, we usually have a 3-day policy. So it's very hard for our code enforcement to enforce a trailer policy with short-term rentals because they're such overturned constantly. So that's where I could go with, hey, if it's a temporary thing where they're just, cleaning it after being used, getting it ready, or, what's the word? Cleaning it, uploading it, and then deloading it, that should be fine, that we should have a good legal valid for that.
We had a discussion about organizing some kind of an oversight or subcontracting a 24/7 call-in for complaints or numbers. Does that fit this piece, or is it a different piece? I don't see that yet.
That'll come in the next step when we
Okay.
put together the process. We have had some conversations with second parties that do that. We've also talked to some municipalities that are using second parties and the effectiveness of those second parties. So we're going to evaluate that as we put the process together once the ordinance is complete. And that's why we've asked for the March 3rd date to start, so we can put all that together.
So you need these components first before you actually finalize your process. I get it.
Yes, sir.
Understood. Okay. Questions?
I have a couple more slides. There were also some citizen and stakeholder requested changes at your last meeting where you heard this. One was for on-site operators where they're renting out a room and they live on-site. They asked to be exempt from the ordinance, and we have included that in the ordinance. There was another request for the booking platform's terms of service to be used in lieu of them being required to submit a sample lease. After review by legal, we determined that those terms of service did not provide enough the protections that we were looking for from the lease. So we are not suggesting that you go with that change, and we still require the lease to be submitted as part of the checklist. After your last meeting, we met with this primary citizen group, and they requested several new items, which included reducing the daytime noise ordinance to 50 decibels, to reduce the 24/7 contact response from 2 hours to 1 hour. I'll just let you know, 2 hours is consistent with our current rental agreements for long-term rentals. That the people using the units could only have 2 pets, and they have to be leashed. We already have a leash law in place. And then they requested some additional required postings, including the daytime sound levels and enforcement, that there shouldn't be any unregistered guests, clarify the property boundaries to reduce trespassing onto neighboring properties, and to include some good neighbor language, and for the city to produce a brochure with rules and procedures. We are planning to, we have St. Johns County's example for the brochure, and we do plan to provide that, but we did not add these things, these other items to the ordinance at this time.
50 decibels is basically what we're talking at right now.
That's correct.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you wanted to add any of these, we could make those changes before second read. These are new items since the last time you heard the ordinance that the community group has brought up.
Just one question. There was, someone suggested that for very, very short-term rentals, that being able to get a lease overnight was not practical.
Yeah, the lease will be as part of the application to set the unit as a short-term rental, to make it registered as a short-term rental. So that won't be an
So
issue.
it's a generic lease that you'll have already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was the background check that you're referencing, where they were
Oh,
concerned
it
with
was-
getting
it
the
was both.
background check in the timely manner. Mhm.
Now, if nobody's asked, does this reasonable with the community of short-term rental folks that have, come to the meetings and given their input? Does this work for hopefully the overwhelming majority of them? I mean, I can't speak for them, so I don't know.
I believe so. Some are in attendance, so you can hear from them directly. I believe we've covered most of their concerns. These are some of the outstanding ones that they brought up since the last meeting.
Okay.
So,
Vice Mayor.
this reduce the daytime noise ordinance. I don't know what 50 dB is.
It's our voice talking right now, 50 decibels, it's just, this is 50 decibels.
Is it, seriously?
Honest, on God.
So I don't know how you can reduce it to that. And does that mean the rest of our citizens can make more noise during the day, but those renting can't?
I think their preference would be to lower it citywide to
So
50 decibels.
So it's a boombox.
it's a boombox or a lawnmower?
Can't do that.
There are some exclusions for equipment related to construction,
Motorcycle?
maintenance.
Motorcycle?
I don't think there's.
Can have electric motorcycle.
Electric motorcycle. I don't know if we can reduce it citywide. I mean, that seems kind of, extreme. Also, limit of 2 pets must be leashed. What's our ordinance now on pets? Isn't it 3? 3 or
I'm
4?
sorry, sir, I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll have to get that to you.
I think
But
it's
it's more
3.
than 2.
It's more than 2. So, and I would think that would be something that the owner of the property might have rules in place. Like you're renting from me and you can't have pets, or you can have 1 pet, or you can have 2 pets. So I'm not quite sure how we would do that too. Now, good neighbor language, that's a nice thought, but what do you do if one neighbor, does some bad language to the other neighbor? What do you do?
I think
You know?
the list of postings that we have will cover a lot of that, but I think it's just, remember, and we could certainly add this to the postings that, remember that you're in a residential neighborhood and, to respect
Be
the
nice.
full-time residents, and yes.
Yeah, but there's no real, if they get into that type of a shouting match, at some point, the sheriff's gonna be called if it goes beyond, so. I don't know, and some of these, just again, the pets, the noise, not quite sure,
And we thought about the property boundaries one as well, and, would you have a survey on site? I'm not sure. Could everyone read a survey to understand? I think it's a little difficult to patrol. I mean, if someone comes on your property, please call 911.
Yeah, or you're on my property, can you
Yeah.
move your vehicle?
Yeah.
Or I'll call 911. I think some of this stuff gets worked out. And I don't know, even no unregistered guests, I would assume that's overnight.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think it would need to be, because you may have friends that come to visit you during the day and have dinner or drinks or whatever.
That's right. I think I was considering it very similarly, like if you were coming to Palm Coast, you may be visiting family, and then you might have family come over to have dinner with you,
Right.
and
Yeah. So those are just my concerns with, the language.
I agree with you, Vice Mayor. I think that, adjusting the city daytime noise ordinance to 50 is a little overkill in my mind. I think 2 hours for the 24-hour contact person is reasonable, but I wouldn't be opposed to reducing it to 1 hour. With regards to the the limit of 2 pets, I don't agree with that. I mean, I travel with all 3 of my dogs, so
Yeah.
that would be kind of tough. And
again, it would
we
be
use
on the-
STRs,
It would be
so.
on the place you were renting. They may have limits.
Right,
and you
of
wouldn't
course.
rent it then if it
Sure.
didn't fit your needs.
Sure. Now, what I will say is for the posting, because I think this goes to, maybe this will help clear things up for you, Vice Mayor, where it says additional required postings, and it has under there the good neighbor language. They're talking about language that says things like, please be mindful of the noise, please be mindful of the lights that are shining across the canal at night, stuff like that. So I agree, and I would hope, what I'm going to ask for from staff is that for the next read, we have a proposed posting that STRs have to place inside of them that have proposed language that for this posting. So, and on this posting, it should say, hey, if you have pets, they should be leashed. Please clean up after your pets. Things like that. And I think that good neighbor language should be in there. Regarding the property boundaries, I know this because my district, this is specific to them. What's happening is people in the rentals are walking across the bulkheads and the seawalls. And so they are they're just walking across several properties, knowing that I'm no longer in front of the home that I'm renting, but it's kids, So, something that says, hey, please stay on our property. Do
Kids
not.
must be leashed.
Yeah, that'll go over really well. I can just see the headlines. So, something that conveys, hey, stay on the property, please don't, they shouldn't be on the seawalls at all. I mean, good Lord, that's dangerous. But I would like to see the proposed posting. So that's where I'm at with the requested changes as is. Now, with regards to the changes that were made, I wanted to get council's thoughts on a few things. So we obviously agreed to the max of 10. I would like to exempt from that count children of 12 months or under. I don't think that babies should be considered an occupant. So I don't know how council feels about that, but to maybe make sure that we're not including kids of 1 year or younger, I think is reasonable. With regards to the background check, I know we had some concern that was expressed from some of our STR renters, our owners, I should say. I think that I have thoroughly looked into at least Airbnb's background checks. I don't know about Vrbo or some of the others, but for Airbnb, they don't allow, for the most part, felons to either rent or be rented to. So now, in all transparency, they also allow for an appeal process. So in other words, if a felony pops up on your background check and you want to appeal them not allowing you to rent, you can do that. So I'm up in the air on whether or not, hey, if there's a platform that already does the background check, should we allow that to fly without requiring our own background check? I don't know, because they allow for that appeal process, so can we really rely on that? I'm not sure, but I want to give them a fair shake. I want to give that consideration a fair shake, because they already do a background check, so I don't know how council feels about that. And then the last thing that I wanted to bring up was Fort Lauderdale has a really good website for their STRs. So I don't know if we were looking to have a website for our residents. Basically, on Fort Lauderdale's website, there's a lot of resources, ways for residents to make complaints to Vrbo, Airbnb, whatever platform that certain STR may be at. But then there's also a link to a list of the rentals in the city and the contact that they can reach out to make a complaint. Because if you go, so like if you were, let's say that I knew an STR was 2 doors down from me, and I went to Airbnb, and I said, hey, pop up the STRs in this area, they don't give you an address. So it makes it kind of hard for residents to make a complaint on a specific address, because it just shows like a dot in a general area on the map. But if we have a list or resource that they can go to, that shows, and we don't need to advertise it to the world, but if concerned residents want to make a complaint, there should be a list in my mind of a contact for them, and or posting on the property for the property manager. So
It's kind of a static website. My only concern here is this data that's going to have to be updated like with every turn of tenant?
well, no, I think not every turn of tenant. No, it would be the owner. So every time a new STR owner comes online, yeah, they'd have to add it into the
We'd have to
system.
add it in. Okay, so that's a function of the city.
It is, it is. And maybe,
I know.
maybe this is something that we look at once we hit a certain threshold of STRs.
I understand the concern.
But I think our residents need something. Even if we do have a 24/7 person, how do they get that contact information? So should there be a posting on the property somewhere that says, hey, here's the contact for, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but where do they get the lease? Where do the,
Well, they have to have a lease to get into the home, right?
no, I know, Mayor, but, okay, let's say that you are in your home and you want to make a complaint against an STR. Who do you reach out to? The city?
Yeah.
And then the city has to what, contact the
Whoever that person is,
person?
whether it's our person or a subcontracted 24/7.
So you're
person.
talking about resources. If we have a website that lists the direct person they can go to,
Yeah, no, I mean, same thing, you just have to have somebody update it
yeah.
all the time.
So I know, these are like logistical, that's a
Yeah,
logistical thing that I think we
know,
need to
it's
work
process.
through.
Yeah, I get it.
But that's my thoughts
Okay.
on the proposed changes.
Maybe I was kind of hoping to hear from the public too, just to see if all
Yeah.
this stuff works, because if you're actually doing it, it may feel a little bit different. You got a couple folks here, I think, that have been involved, so do you want to make a comment before I open up the public
Sure.
comment?
And if I can go first, I was just going to say the background checks, I think, is not an issue because it's handled by platforms. Besides that, I think it's a good idea for children under 12 months to be considered not part of that maximum 10, but those were the only comments that I had.
I have concerns with the 50 decibels and the 2 to 1 hour to respond, and with the pets as well. As a pet owner, I could see where that's an issue, especially traveling. But to Councilwoman Pontieri, I know this is an issue in your district, and I guess my question is, I'm a big requirements person. Does this ordinance meet the requirement of the concerns from the folks that have engaged you on this?
It doesn't. They still have a lot of concerns, but I'm trying to balance their concerns with what's reasonable and with our STR owners. So I can't just listen to my district. We represent the city at large. So this addresses a lot of their concerns. I think the website would really, really go a long way because it gives them a lot of resources at that point that they can use that would just really help. So even though we're not, like that list that we looked at, the 50 decibels and the pets and all, and I've spoken to them about these things. So, but I think the website would go a long way.
Just a quick point, the website, so the mandate for us to provide a response, for them to have somebody respond to them, do they need to go through the city to say, hey, I contacted them at 1:59 PM and they haven't contacted me back by 2:59 PM? I just feel like if we're removing the city's engagement there, we're gonna have a hard time policing that, essentially. If we allow some people to go make complaints just directly to that person, then they're going to come back to the city and say, hey, they didn't respond back to me in a few hours.
It's a fair point too.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and so that's one of the reasons a lot of these folks ask for us to contract out a party,
Right.
a company to help with this. Now,
To
that
do
comes
this.
at an expense, and to their point, well, then raise the fees that you charge STRs to pay for the expense.
So that was a question. Did we all agree that the fees would pay for whatever I think we did, the accompanying cost of this? Because then, you're right, I mean, subcontracting out to an agency, let's just use that word, that does this, they probably have the systems in place. It's not nearly as big a deal as trying to create something here within the city, which would be mind-boggling at first.
I don't recall us
No,
actually
I thought we
looking at-
talked about it.
No, sorry. I don't recall us actually doing an analysis of whether or not we got cost recovery.
No, and a fee resolution would be attached to the ordinance second read. So that information would come to you with the fee resolution. So you would need to adopt the ordinance first and second read, and then at second read, we would provide you with a fee resolution and that cost-benefit analysis.
Okay, and can we, when that comes back, can we see what this new code enforcement officer is going to cost us so that we can do that assessment?
Sure.
Okay.
I think everybody else agrees with the other points with the kids and the
Yeah,
dogs and all that
I
stuff.
think we just need a little more, the actual language.
Okay.
I mean, like on the dogs being leashed. I mean, I think you're basically talking about our regular city ordinance. If you're walking your dog, that has to be leashed. We just can't say pets must be leashed, because if it's in the house or it's fenced-in property, obviously that's not the case, so.
So if you're all okay, let's take a minute and hear from the public. See what, are there members of the public that would like to address this item at this time? Yes, sir.
Hi there, I'm Kathy Davison. I live in the P section, and
Kathy,
I'm an
can you pull the mic
Airbnb.
down?
What?
Thank you.
And I am an Airbnb host. I've been an Airbnb host, superhost for 10 years, and I'm very proud of what I do. So I'm very proud of being a business owner and making this available to people. Want to encourage you to be careful on the decisions that you make, because they could hurt the little guys. We are the little guys. We're not your big corporations. We're doing everything right. We're paying our taxes and stuff, and we're doing what we're supposed to do. People like us, people that live in the home and people that don't live in the home. We live in our home, and we rent out 5 of our rooms out of our house. That income right there pays for our house. So your decisions affect whether we have our house or not. So this is really big. Our daughter has her own home. She doesn't live in a house, but she lives 3 miles away. She works full-time at Publix, and her husband works at Walmart. And so they're busy, but they stay very active in their Airbnb. They go there every single morning, making sure that everything is set in place and put into place and all set and ready to go. Also wanted to bring up about asking about us making sure that we have battery-operated cameras. Or not cameras, but lights. Is it lights? Or, yeah,
It was lights that was discussed, but, yeah.
Oh, okay, I understood it to be cameras. Vivid is who we've had for a very long time. They do not have battery-operated cameras or lights that is connected to the system. So that's a problem in our world. And then also Bike Week is a big deal to us. We get a lot of bikers come to our home, and they have their trailers. So they're there for 1 or 2 or 3 nights, and they have parked on the side of our lot, you know, our place there. But that is a big week. It is a big financial week for us. And as far as people, we can fit 3 people per room. We have a very big house. We've been very blessed with that. So we wanted to make that encouragement. So thank you, and I really appreciate it.
We appreciate your input.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I'm with her.
Yeah.
I like the shirt.
Thank you, yes, indeed.
I'm sorry, before you go, the lights thing is still in or not?
Yes, sir.
The battery
It's,
ones?
emergency lighting.
Okay, all right.
See, the emergency lighting thing with the batteries, it doesn't make much sense, because if we run out of electricity, that doesn't happen that often, number one. And we have lights, like we pay Vivint a lot of money. We spend, I don't know, we spend a lot of money for lights, cameras, and everything. I called them and said, do you have battery backup lights? They don't even sell them. So, you know, you're talking to people who just, you know, make a little extra money from our Airbnb, and now we got to go out and buy these new lights with batteries. It doesn't make much sense.
I don't know, I have them at my house, but okay.
Say again?
I said I have them at my house.
Battery operated lights?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I don't know where to get them, but maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't know. But with the background checks, I think we're in agreement that if we do Airbnb, we don't need to do the extra background checks.
We haven't decided on that.
That's one of the issues, right?
Do you want to do
Yeah.
back and forth?
But no, yeah, all right, just ask your questions and then we'll just go ahead and make your points. You're right, Jason.
I mean, with the background checks, it's a moot point if Airbnb is fine, but, you know, Airbnb does background checks. Obviously, like any background check, they have their fine print. They can't guarantee it's 100% pure. If we do our own background checks, there's no background checks that are perfect because it's cities and, or, you know, everything like that. But, like, not to defend sexual offenders, but right within 5 miles of the room right here, there are 80. I can give you picture, address, you know, sex offenders. And hotels don't do sex offender background checks. And there's a lot, you know, it's a scary thought to realize that there's that many sex offenders around. But yeah, so the Airbnb does the background checks. That should be, you know, again, there should be a second level thing here. I like with the children 12 and under, because again, with us 5 bedrooms, we really could have it, instead of just 10 for whatever house, because somebody has a 2-bedroom house, they could have 10 people, you know, that's fine. But with a 6-bedroom home, 5 bedrooms we rent out, 3 people per bedroom, 15 would be, you know, fair. That would be, you know, really a maximum number for a house our large. And that can be addressed, because usually that's with kids involved under 12 years old. Yeah, my wife mentioned the bike week is very important. And the biggest thing that my daughter wanted to point out was, you know, the real problem is the parties, the loud music and trash. And there can't be that many instances of that. I think the folks that are complaining, they have a legitimate complaint, but we're making rules for something that doesn't probably happen that much. And like I said, having a simple person that somebody can call, that can go to that house and say, look, pick up your trash or get fined, cut down the noise. We don't need to have as much stuff, I don't think, as we're putting together right here, so,
All right, thank you for that.
thanks.
Okay, did we, one second. Did we carve out or have a conversation about Airbnbs that had owners living on site?
Marcus has an answer for you.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt. Let's do public comment. Stay with that. I just want to know, please.
Okay, thanks, Leslie, again from P Section. Can you double check on that Airbnb and VRBO requiring a background check? I just rented in North Carolina to go visit my brother. There was no background check on me or my family, and we had 4 and 2 children. They asked how many people, what are the ages, that kind of thing, but no background check whatsoever. So could you just check on that? Also with the past VRBO, there was no background check at all. Now, things might have changed since I rented from them, but, you know, I'd rather y'all be safe than sorry.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there passive background checks?
It's my understanding that to be eligible to use the platform on either side, from the operator side or from the renter side, they perform background. It might be in the, it's probably a box you check that they allow you to run that on you.
All right.
They did your background check and she just was unaware of it.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on this item at this time? Seeing no one come forward, let's come back to the dais.
I think on the background checks, if we change the language to acceptable background checks, that would include the ones that are run by these companies, or if there is no company involved, then you would be responsible for running that background check on that one person, possibly. That might solve our problem.
I'm struggling with acceptable.
Well, acceptable would be one of these platforms, one of these
There'd
companies.
be a list of,
Yes.
okay, authorized, whatever.
Yes,
Okay.
authorized, blah, 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 and if you're just, renting your own place out and you're not using one of these services, then, you need to do a background check.
Can I ask a question? This is turning into a monster.
Yes.
Is it possible that we have a phased approach and we get way better on day one and then fine tune it as we move forward, or are we looking for perfection on the first round here?
We leave open the option that it could come back.
I'm just kind of concerned that I'm struggling with it. Well, how do you feel?
The lighting too, I'm struggling
Yeah.
with, because it's a house. You drop off your luggage, you're in this house, where the kitchen is, where the bathroom is, the bedrooms. It's not a hotel room with big, long hallways and, 10 floors where you do need lighting. It's a house.
I think I have a solution for that, because I had mentioned this before.
Torches.
And yeah, torches, that would be awesome, yes. No, I want one.
Keep our fire department busy, that's great.
Yeah, I'm sure they're cringing back there. So, and I just remember this because of the hurricane. We have these little, and I think American Red Cross makes them. They're actually night lights. They plug into the outlets, and then as soon as your power goes out, the light, and it's bright, and the light pops on. So if we do an inspection and they show that in these outlets we have these, I think that should be sufficient, because honestly, our power went out and it lit up the place. I didn't even need flashlights. So I don't know if we need to say that they need to be in all of the bedrooms, so if that means there's 15, or not bedrooms, but rooms, there's 15 rooms in your house, sorry, you gotta have 15 flashlights. But to me, that would be sufficient, and it wouldn't cost all of these, things that people are concerned about. I agree with the background check. I think that if the platform does the background check, that should be sufficient, but the person renting should still certify that they're not a sex offender and that they're not, none of their guests are sex offenders. I think we still need to have that certification in their requirements. Here's what's going to be unpopular. I do not want to exempt from this ordinance as a whole STRs where the owner lives in the residence. I think that maybe they can be exempt from certain aspects of this, but to just exempt them from this ordinance as a whole is completely unfair. And I think, maybe not for you folks, but for other folks could be abused. I mean, then anybody can say, oh, I live in the home, I'm exempt. How do we prove it? How do we enforce it? I don't know. So I think that there needs to be, maybe, to your point, in my mind, this needs to be workshopped one more time. But there maybe can be certain little exemptions for.
Probationary period, we could test it out and see what works.
Maybe, but, and I looked at legal if we can even do this, but something that carves out maybe a few things that owner-occupied STRs are not bound to, but to just exempt them from the ordinance, I don't think is proper.
I agree.
I have seen a couple ordinances like that. If I can get direction of what you would want us to carve out, that is something that we can work at.
And I think that would require an assessment by all of us to like go back and look at what we're proposing again to see what's fair to exempt owner-occupied STRs from. So I think this should be a workshop one more time.
I agree.
Mayor, if I can, if that is the request of city council, this would be at a December or January council timeframe.
So we're not really tabling today, we're just,
We would need to table
You
it.
wanna
Because
table it?
Because it is
Okay.
a first reading of an ordinance, we would need that
and
direction.
the only other thing I would ask is that there's an organized group of owners, that there be some contact there before you come back and make sure that we flush out whatever, and just highlight the ones that are sensitive so that we know or that you'll have to deal with those.
Do we need a motion to table?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
I'll
I have
second
a
that.
motion from Vice Mayor to table this item until,
First available workshop.
well, no, I don't know.
No.
Yes, December 10th is the workshop.
Okay. And who did I get second from Councilman Clufus? Any further discussion? All in favor? Yeah.
I want to make sure the direction we're giving to staff, when you come back, will those changes be incorporated since that was the consensus of the board? Okay, perfect.
Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Marcus, you have what you need for that. And Jason, you have enough?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you for your patience, folks. Appreciate it. Moving on to item number 8, which is amending the Unified Land Development Code. If, Marcus, you read that in for us when you can. Give him a minute.
Ordinance 2024-XX, amending the Unified Land Development Code to implement and ensure compliance with the Live Local Act.
Mayor and City Council, this was requested per your direction to get an informative presentation on the Live Local Act. Mr. Hanson has also provided a draft ordinance to make any changes that you would like and actually put some legislation in progress. And Mr. Hanson's prepared to give you that presentation this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michael Hanson, Community Development Services. For the sake of your time and brevity, I'll try and make this as short and succinct as I can. The Live Local Act was adopted back in July 1st of 2023 as Senate Bill 102. It was later amended this past May, on May 16th, and the whole idea behind the Live Local Act is it's a series of state preemptions on land use that affect us as far as density, floor area ratio, building height, and a number of different requirements that, because it's a state preemption, it's something that we can't really do anything about necessarily other than implement it. But there's certain areas within the actual bill that allows us some levity as far as trying to implement it is on a local level to ensure some protections for the city. So that's the intent of the presentation and the draft ordinance. As far as the preemptions for the Live Local Act, the Live Local Act is designed to provide affordable housing as a tool that can be utilized. It does require a project that uses commercial or industrial zone property and allows for residential development within commercial or industrial use property. Normally, we don't allow this. The project would have to have at least 40% of residential rental units, so it has to be a rental project. It can't be for fee simple, for an affordability period of at least 30 years. Because Palm Coast is a community that designates less than 20% of our land area for commercial or industrial uses, there's a provision in the law that states that we only have to approve a mixed-use residential development through the Live Local Act. So the law states that there's 65% of the land area for mixed-use development must be residential. It doesn't define a minimum for non-residential component. So as I'll get through the ordinance, we're proposing a minimum to that to ensure some protection of our commercial and industrial. As you can see on the PowerPoint in front of you, the city has approximately 4.3% of the city's gross area is designated as one of our commercial 1, 2, 3, industrial 1 or 2, or our office 1 or 2 zoning classifications, where the Live Local Act would be eligible if a developer was trying to utilize that as a tool to develop affordable housing within the city. There's a certain exemption that allows and reduces, that prevents a Live Local development from occurring within quarter mile of a runway or its extension for 10,000 feet. We do have a certain property that's annexed within the city within that 10,000 foot radius of, linear 10,000 feet from the Flagler Airport. But as far as the Live Local Act, it only has preemptions for things like density, building height, floor ratio. So anything that it doesn't preempt, that development still has to meet the remainder of our land development code, Florida Fire Prevention Code, Florida Building Code. So things like setbacks, landscape buffers, ADA compliance, all that is still required. So an application still has to go through our internal technical review process. The thing about the Live Local Act, though, is it does require any kind of eligible Live Local development to be administratively approved. So regardless of the number of units or the size of it, it wouldn't come before the planning board or the city council for approval. So it's just administratively approved through essentially our Tier 1 technical review application. The state defines affordability with these 4 categories of extremely low income, very low income, and moderate income, ranging from 30% to 100% of the median annual adjusted gross income through the MSA, the Metropolitan Statistical Area for the community. This slide gives you kind of a perspective of what that range is. It's essentially between $520 to $2,080 per month. And the definition of affordable includes not just the rent, but also the taxes, insurance, and utilities that would be assessed to a rental applicant, so that it doesn't exceed essentially 30% of their gross income for an eligible family. As far as the preemptions, if an application comes through and meets the requirements for the affordability aspect of it, they're allowed to use the maximum density allowed within the city, which is currently 15 dwelling units per acre. So regardless of what zoning that they have, they can use the max. With floor area ratio, they're allowed to use 150% of the highest floor area ratio within the city. So that would be, as of right now, be 82.5%. Height, they're also allowed preemption on height, but it's more limited. So it's for development within 1 mile. They essentially would be able to do the maximum allowed height within 1 mile of the development. But with Senate Bill 328 that was adopted in May, it added certain protections if the development is adjacent on 2 or more sides to a single-family development with at least 25 contiguous homes, in which case then the height is restricted to 150% of any adjacent building, zoning limit or 3 stories, whichever higher. So that usually works out to about 35 feet or thereabouts. As far as the density, floor area ratio, and height preemptions, these are for what we have defined in the Land Development Code, so it doesn't take into consideration any kind of, say, density bonus or height bonus that an individual project may have applied for that could have been eligible for that they're awarded. So it's just looking at what's actually allowed just by the straight zoning districts that we have within the city. The law also has provisions regarding parking. It requires us to consider reducing parking requirements within a quarter mile of a transit stop. The law doesn't define transit stop. In our draft ordinance, we have language from Florida Department of Transportation to define that as well. It also allows for parking reduction for 20% within a half mile from a major transportation hub. That law does define major transportation hubs to talk about transit stations, whether using bus, train, or light rail. As of right now, the city doesn't have any areas that meet that definition for a major transportation hub. It does allow for the reduction within areas that have surplus parking, so within 600 feet of a live local development, if there's an area that has surplus parking for on-street parking lots or parking garages that could be available for residents in the live local community, they could qualify for that 20% reduction as well. So the city has requirements for required amount of parking, but we also allow for a maximum amount of parking, which allows for an increase of up to 20%. So it's possible that an adjacent development might have excess parking, but in the event that that would happen, we would require some kind of shared parking agreement that is memorialized, so that way we can make sure that each development is meeting its parking requirements and not dropping below the required parking for either. The Live Local Act does allow any kind of eligible development from receiving any kind of density bonuses or floor area ratio or height bonuses that they could theoretically be eligible for. And so the city council could grant that, but it requires any kind of approval of any bonuses if they are eligible for any that may come to pass in the next number of years, because this Live Local Act is the law of the land until October 1st of 2033 as of right now, that those bonuses are granted administratively. Any Live Local development is treated as conforming even after the expiration of the law, which, as I said, is October 1st of 2033, or the expiration of the development's affordability period, which is that minimum of 30 years. In the event the development violates that affordability period, the law requires that they're given a reasonable time to remedy the violation. And otherwise, they end up getting treated as a non-conforming use. Now, moving on to the portion of the Land Development Code amendments that we're proposing, and please feel free to stop me anytime if you have any questions. The draft ordinance amends Section 2.04 of the Land Development Code to put a line in there that states developments pursuant to Live Local Act, regardless of size or number of units, are treated as that minor development type or intensity. So that's for the administrative approval piece. Additionally, because there's no public hearing, we have amended 2.05.02.1 so that developments pursuant to Live Local Act will not require a neighborhood meeting, since there's no public hearing for them to come before. Additionally, we added a use under Section 3.03 called Live Local Mixed Use Residential Developments. It limits that use to being permitted under the Commercial 1, 2, 3, OFC 1, 2, Industrial 1, 2 zoning districts. We also added a footnote 4 that states that new developments pursuant to the Live Local Act shall be authorized in accordance with Section 306 until the sunset of the Live Local Act on October 1st, 2033, or as amended, and Live Local Act developments shall be considered conforming after the sunset of the Act as long as they maintain their affordability compliance as outlined in Section 306. And that establishes essentially a sunset provision so that after that time, development won't be able to come in and actually apply to use Live Local. The bulk of our new language for implementing the Live Local is under this new Section 306. We established zoning applicability, once again, the commercial 1, 2, 3, OFC 1, 2, industrial 1 and 2 zoning classifications. And we include the statement about the city designating less than 20% of its land area, so that we only have to authorize development as a Live Local mixed-use residential development. The use of the property, as is right now for that mixed use, requires a minimum 65% of the residential portion. So as the draft ordinance is written, we're currently proposing 30% to be for the non-residential use. We're open.
Here,
Yes, sir.
doesn't the state only requires 20% here, correct?
That's not correct. In the actual law, for either Senate Bill 102 or Senate Bill 328, there's no defined minimum for non-residential use.
So what exactly does that mean?
So,
I'm sorry.
30% for non-residential uses, so that would be commercial, correct?
so we're having it set up based on the underlying zoning or zoning district. So if a Live Local project came in, say in commercial 2, they would have to have 65% for the residential piece, but then, as it is written, 30% for commercial. If an application came in an industrial zone district, they would have to have the 30% as the industrial use.
Can we change that to 35% to ensure the maximum of, our maximum non-residential is preserved? It's bad enough they're coming in and taking away our non-residential. Can we at least preserve the max at 35%?
And yeah, if it's the will of the council, we can definitely do that.
So that's one thing I'd ask for, but I'll wait.
But I'm still confused because I thought the state requirement was 20%.
No, what the state requires, if they're going to do a Live Local on a commercial or industrial piece of property, what the law says is, for our circumstances in Palm Coast, you have to be a mixed-use development, which you have to have a residential component and a commercial component. The state law is silent on how much commercial to put. What the state law says is that you have to have a minimum of 65% of that area needs to be residential. So our maximum that we can put as part of that mixed use could be 35%.
Yeah, I thought the state requirement was 20% at a minimum, a maximum, actually.
That 20%
be-
that you're seeing, sir?
And maybe I'm reading the wrong section. I was reading section 125.01055.7.
So 20%, with the state law, Palm Coast, along with some other master plan communities in the state of Florida, has a little bit of an exemption within the state law, because our total, remember the map that Michael had showed, our total percentage of our non-residential, our commercial and industrial, is less than 20% gross for land area. So because we have less than 20% of commercial zone
exemption.
property, then anybody who wants to utilize this Live Local Act, if you're going to develop in a commercial piece of property, you have to be a mixed use. So we're not losing all of our commercial, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So I just want to make sure I'm, slide 182, but I don't know where that corresponds. It's the one with the map. And it says here, no, it does not apply to areas zoned MPD. Is that what you were just talking about?
No,
Okay.
a lot of our Florida communities, like Cape Coral, there's a handful that were developed with predominantly residential
Okay.
and very little commercial zoning, and we fall into that category. Because the city of Palm Coast predominantly has 85–90% of residential land use, and we're about 4.34 of just our commercial base. Anybody who is going to utilize the Live Local Act and develop on commercial property must be a mixed use. So there needs to be a component of commercial and residential. Now, if you were in an area in Florida that you had more than 20% of commercial, they could utilize this Live Local Act and just do all residential in a commercial zoned or industrial zone property. But because Palm Coast has less than 20% of our overall zone, commercial and industrial in the city, folks who utilize this regulation must do a mixed use, must be a component of residential and commercial on the piece of property.
Okay, so if I was a big defense contractor wanting to come in and set up an operation here in Palm Coast, right? It's going to take up a lot of area, for example. Obviously, I'm not going to do it under this, but can I still do it? Or would this live local limit that kind of a project, jobs and opportunity coming here to our community?
No, sir. If any commercial development, it doesn't affect any commercial development on vacant commercial property. It's still zone commercial. You can still have that use on a piece of raw land. What this law is for affordability, affordable housing that the state had posed. It's only for the utilization of affordable housing on it. So hopefully that answers the question. So it does not affect any of our other commercial property.
Because I'm on the hunt to bring big businesses here, and these limitations are going to be brought up if it falls into those categories. But, okay, thank you.
Councilman, what should be very clear, though, is it does usurp our authority to preserve our commercially zoned property. So what this law says is that if we have commercially zoned property and a live local affordable housing development wants to come in and take that property and turn it into residential, it can do so. And it can do so without a single public hearing. It can do so without going in front of PLDRB. It can do so without minding doing any of the neighborhood hearings that we require of other developers, things like that. All it needs is administrative approval, and our staff's hands are tied at not allowing, for instance, the 15 units is our max per acre. They can come in and do the absolute max without a single public hearing. So that is the danger of this. It takes away home rule in this regard.
But we have to comply with this, correct?
That's correct. It's a state preemption.
Yeah, and this was passed in Tallahassee twice. I think there was only one vote against it. I don't know if it was in the State House or the other side, but the bottom line is our hands are tied, basically.
It is, and when Mr. Hanson finishes his presentation, there are things that we are able to do via the ordinance, and he's going to get to some of the things that we're proposing. Like, for example, and I think Councilmember Pontieri had mentioned about maximizing the commercial component of the property to 35%. We can do that. Mm-hmm. We can do that because state law says you have to have at least 65%. So we can rise that and add that as part of the ordinance.
Any changes that we're able to do that we make, does it have to be run by the state?
No, sir.
No. But we did work with our legal team, though, as we're going through this presentation and our draft ordinance, for sure.
Yeah, I'll let you get through the rest of your.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was saying, but we don't have to run it by the state, so it's our legal opinion that we can do this, but it could open us up to a court challenge.
Well,
if somebody disagrees.
Yeah, I will tell you, as part of the ordinance, Mr. Hanson has, in crafting this ordinance, is actually putting the verbatim state law within our ordinance. Mm-hmm. And then we are adding those different components that aren't conflicted with the state law.
Yeah, I think what's key here is, first of all, for posterity, the legislation in Tallahassee, the first time around, did not have unanimous, not even close, Republican unanimous consent. The only reason the updated version passed is because it did put limitations on the swipe of home rule that the first draft did. And so, of course, Republicans had to get behind it because it was kind of like take this or nothing. This is the birth child of, I will say, just some actors in Tallahassee I don't agree with. But that being said, I'm a big home rule person, right? I mean, I believe in federalism. I think that communities should govern communities, states should govern states, and the federal government should stay as far away from us as possible. So just as an example, to kind of make this more tangible for everybody, currently in the Piper, there's a proposed live local that is trying to usurp 11 acres of our commercially zoned property off of Old Kings and put in a live local residential development. So they're taking away 11 acres of our commercially zoned property to put in more residents. And they're doing this without coming before this council. They're doing this without taking it at all to our public and to our residents. So I have a really big problem with that. Now, to the extent that we need to protect ourselves from liability, obviously, but because this is so new, we're not doing anything, and I've looked at this and we've spoken about it. We're not doing anything that has been struck down by any court. We're not doing anything that any attorney general opinion has come out and said you can't do it. So I think we're very safe here. I think this is the best thing that we can do to protect our community while being mindful and in line with what the state has required. So I'm obviously you got to finish, but I know everything that you guys, the work you put into this is great.
All right, I just want to make sure we're following the law. I mean, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
We don't have a choice. And our changes here, would they affect, if we go along with these changes, would it affect the application for that live local that's already been made?
No, sir.
They would not affect it.
No, sir.
So
I
this
don't
is
wanna-
this is for newer live locals.
It is.
Not for the application that has been made.
That's right.
I was curious about that too. Thank you.
I don't know that we should go on record with that. I know that particular development came before the county, and the county did not approve it yet. So I don't want to necessarily put that cart before the horse, just for the record. I think we should wait and see what happens. I hear what you're saying, but let's not opine on that just yet.
And we'll have a discussion with our attorney.
So you retracting what you just said? Or?
It is a legal opinion, but through my experience, if you already have an application in-house, then you're kind of
Playing by those rules.
playing by the rules
Not
of the
new
rules that
rules.
you put. But then again,
Sure.
live local,
No.
live local is a state regulation that has been implemented to the city and kind of forced upon the city.
Right.
Unlike a regulation that the city comes up with. So there's two distinctions. Like if we were going to make a regulation on setbacks for a house, that's a city regulation, we're going to do that. An application was already in or a building permit was already in, we would not apply that. That is a city regulation. This is a state regulation, so that I'm not backtracking, it's just apples and oranges. That's where the city attorney comes in to discuss that, because this is totally unique.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have to be careful here. We don't want to be sued, obviously.
Right.
I don't know if that would fall under Bert Harris or what, probably, I don't know. But I just think we need to be careful when we start changing the rules in the middle of the game, sort of.
And I do have a provision in the draft ordinance that establishes that any application that we receive pursuant to Live Local would be considered non-conforming. So if it was a previous application we had prior to the effective date of the ordinance, so that covers us with this current application that we have right now before the ordinance is adopted.
Got it.
Continuing on, under section 306, we reiterate what the state law mandates as far as preempts, as far as a development being able to use the maximum density allowed within any zoning district in the city, or the 150% floor area ratio, or the maximum height within 1 mile of the development. But where the law was silent on to add some extra protections for the city, since we're looking at doing these live local mixed-use developments, we wanted to ensure that our commercial and industrial base isn't diluted further, and wanted to make sure that someone doesn't come in the future after this ordinance is adopted and just builds out 300 apartment units and disappears and doesn't build the commercial and industrial piece. So we do have language in the draft ordinance that the development of the non-residential and residential components has to be concurrent unless it's phased, in which case then the non-residential portion has to be constructed first. Now, as far as how we're going to look at the mixed use, We're giving the developers the ability to vertically stack the non-residential and residential uses, or have them spread out horizontally on the property. But due to the nature of the ordinance allowing local developments within the industrial zoning districts that we have a provision in here that wouldn't allow a vertical mixed use in the industrial 1 or 2. So vertical mixed use would be allowed in the commercial 1, 2, 3, or OFC 1 or 2. The reason and justification for that is that we wouldn't have someone's apartment above like a metal fabricator or some kind of other heavy industrial use. However, in the industrial areas, it's allowed to be horizontally mixed use. Further, we have requirements in the draft ordinance for perimeter landscape buffers and also a landscape buffer in between the non-residential and residential use of a development. And we thought about the non-residential portion because if I were to develop an apartment building and have a leasing office, we didn't want that to count as the non-residential component. So we have a provision in there, the non-residential portion has to be a principal use of the underlying zoning district and designed so that it could theoretically be a standalone development. And that the non-residential portion shall not be an accessory use to the residential portion, such as that leasing office or any other kind of uses typically related to the management of a multifamily residential development. We have prohibitions on the non-residential portion for an adult-oriented business or mini warehouse, office warehouse, or self-storage facility, as is right now. The non-residential and residential portions are supposed to be interconnected with sidewalks and internal roads. They'll share the same access. That way we're not inundating our arterial or collector roads with additional points of entry. Loading and refuse collection areas are designed in the draft ordinance to be in areas that provide the least impact to any adjacent residential community. The intent there is so that if I have this commercial piece next to a residential property, I'm not going to be having some kind of heavy-duty tractor trailer or garbage truck going right next to someone's backyard or so. So the intent is to have it on those locations for loading and refuse on the further side of the property, away from the adjacent residential. We met with put the requirement as far as the 20% parking reduction threshold in there as mandated by the state law for developments within a quarter mile of a transit stop or within 600 feet of an area that has surplus available parking. We're requiring them to have a parking agreement to use that surplus parking to ensure that either development doesn't drop below their minimum required parking. We have language in there for the exemption of airports and define the affordability period as a period of 30 years from the date of the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. The tool that we're looking at how to actually implement Live Local for Development is through what's called a land use restriction agreement. So we have one drafted up currently as well that will effectively get signed in by the developer or property owner and the city. It gets recorded with with Flagler County and goes through the official record process. And it's designed to run with the land in the event that someone sells the land, but it essentially sets it up for ensuring that the project maintains its affordability period, that it has at least the required 40% affordable units, and that they're being rented to people that are eligible as far as the income restrictions established. And it also sets up a couple different provisions as far as ensuring compliance and monitoring, which we have mirrored in our land development code draft ordinance, so that the owner will be responsible for the income verification of their tenants, and they have to submit an annual report to the city to ensure compliance.
Is that not already required by state law?
So, as is set up with state law, if they're looking for tax exemptions through this process, they have to send an annual report. I believe it's through the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, and that ties it in. But this, by requiring them to send to us we're ensuring that they're maintaining their affordability within our backyard as well.
Okay.
Additionally, We have requirements in there that the affordable units have to be comparable in quality to the market rate units. They have to be intermixed within the development, so they can't be segregated off to the side, so to speak. And as far as the comparability, they have to be comparable in terms of size, features, number of bedrooms, and they can't, the people living in the affordable units can't be excluded from using any of the common amenities within the project. The property owner is required for record keeping for a period of 10 years to maintain accurate records for their tenants that are occupying affordable units for a Live Local project. The annual reporting requirements, they're to submit into, the annual report to us by September 30 of each year so that we can ensure compliance with the Live Local Act. Now, we also add a line in there that allows us to, with notice, inspect all records pertaining to the affordable units in the development within, and then also to inspect the affordable units to ensure compliance with the Live Local Act. Additionally, to help facilitate this, we drafted up 11 definitions to add to the glossary of the Land Development Code. And the majority of these definitions come directly through from state statute as defined by the state. So we have language in there for adjusted gross income and language for affordable units, eligible household, land use restriction agreement. We define what the Live Local Act is. We define within our own LDC, Live Local, mixed-use residential development, and we wanted to identify these projects as Live Local in the name, so that way it differentiates them from any other kind of mixed-use development that the city might see with another application to reduce any kind of possibility for confusion. And then we have broad definitions for mixed use, horizontal mixed use development and vertical mixed use development that could be applicable to any kind of mixed use, since that's just talking about spreading out either horizontally or vertically stacking it. Have a definition for sunset provision, since it wasn't defined in our land development code, and a definition from transit stop as pulled from the Florida Department of Transportation. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we do have that language in there for any kind of Live Local development, such as the one that Councilwoman Pontieri mentioned, that lawfully exists prior to the effective date of the ordinance would be considered non-conforming. With that, I'm available for any questions that the council might have. Thank you.
I have no other questions. I mean, there's a whole lot of changes in there, and my concern is that we better make sure we legally dot our i's and cross our t's, because I could see someone coming down the road in the future challenging some of this stuff, obviously, because it's a new law. It's a whole new ball game. I'd hate to see us get into any sort of expensive legal situation dealing with something like this. I assume there's other communities throughout the state that are probably going through the same thing.
That's correct, sir. Pretty much every community has to adopt this. To my knowledge, as of today, there haven't been any legal challenges that I'm aware of throughout any communities regarding the Live Local Act.
Okay, that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work on this. Fantastic job. And I think this is the first time you presented in front of us. Is that right?
That's correct, ma'am.
Yeah, good
Job,
job.
Michael.
The one other change that I would like to make, other than the 35%, is can we exempt from the definition of transit stop bus stops? I don't think that was the intent of this, and bus stops are fluid. So if we can make that very clear, that transit stop does not include a school bus stop.
Yes, ma'am, we'll do that.
We'll make that note.
Who's the next closest community that fits our size exemption?
Marcus, do you know? I know Cape Coral.
Coral.
You remember? Northport. There was a handful.
Okay.
And I can't remember all of them, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Just a real quick question. How do they intend to enforce the affordability for 30 years?
That's what the restrictive covenant that runs with the land, sir.
Okay, got it. There, it's gonna be hard.
I mean, what's the formula for affordability?
Yeah, because they guarantee, it
Yeah.
says, for 30 years it has to be affordable, but how, that's just,
Even though the preemption expires in 2033, right? That's what I'm looking at now. I mean, do we have to follow the 30, or do we follow the when the preemption expires?
So after 10 years, the prices go to market. What's the penalty? In other words, how does whoever get back what was given?
The way the law is written currently, it states that non-compliance with the law, so if a project comes in as a development, they would essentially, they're given time to remedy the violation, but if not, then they're treated as a non-conforming structure or use.
So they took the money and ran, and what? Kept running?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
I support 35% as
Hasn't been
well.
fixed since the first legislation came out.
I just say that I support 35% as well.
And council members, I think tomorrow night, after the first reading, because we want to really get this ordinance to you quickly, we are going to the Planning and Land Development Regulation Board tomorrow night for them to consider this ordinance as well. And then on the second read, on the adoption hearing, I will provide what their recommendation is.
So then I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance with the two changes of exempting the school bus stop from transit stop definition and changing the 35% commercial minimum.
Those were the only two that we talked
Second.
about.
Yes.
Nobody else had any other, it was just those two? Okay, so I have a motion, and I have a second. Any additional discussion? Then let me put this out to the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item at this time? Seeing no one come forward, I'll come back to the dais. Any final discussion? So all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed?
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, there you go.
yeah. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Okay, Marcus, you want to?
Oh, the mouse is much harder to use with that hand.
Our next one is ordinance 2024-XX, creating an art in public places program for city beautification.
Mayor, as James is getting ready for his presentation, I just wanted to let you know this is per your request from your August 13th City Council workshop, where Mr. Hurst presented on several programs for arts, culture, and history programs, including future solar funds, and this was one of the requested directions to come back, was the percentage for arts ordinance, which is very similar to City of Sarasota. So, James?
And just one additional, Mr. Mayor and Council, Mr. Patrick Kennedy, another attorney at my firm, helped draft this ordinance. He's attending virtually if there's any questions from the council.
All righty, well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council, James Hurst with the Parks and Recreation Department. Lauren stole my thunder for my introduction, but we'll go ahead and we'll get started. So just on today's presentation, we're here for the percentage of arts ordinance for the first read. We'll quickly go through our agenda. We'll have the council priority objective 11, go into the percentage of arts ordinance. A part of this, we also highlighted the establishment of art in lieu of the fee, application requirements, acceptable versus non-acceptable artwork, and then a committee review process, and I'll get to those in more detail throughout the slides. So council priority was to identify dedicated funding sources for the arts, cultural, historical activities. The strategy for this objective was the City of Palm Coast currently works with local organizations and promotes citywide activities involving arts and history. And then to properly expand the city's art, cultural, history initiatives, funding options will need to be identified. So just before we get started on the establishment of the Public Art Fund, I just wanted to just go through the purpose of this ordinance. This ordinance is to ensure the City of Palm Coast recognizes the enormous cultural, aesthetic, and economic value of the community vitality that the arts will bring to the city. This article establishes an art and public places program for the integration of public arts into both public and private spaces throughout the art district for the benefit of the entire city by requiring certain new private development to provide such public art value to 0.5%, so 0.5% of construction value of the project, or provide equivalent funds to support the installation of public art and public art. So first we looked at establishing a public
Just
art.
quick question.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, this is something you can't do with impact fees, right? We can't collect impact fees for the arts. Is that correct?
This is, yeah, you can go ahead, Marcus. Yeah.
Or is this an impact fee?
Is it impact
Can we
fee?
actually collect impact fees for the arts?
Currently, I believe we do not have anything impact fee for the arts. I think this would be kind of that. This could be kind of an impact kind of fee for the arts. Yeah.
The arts?
Yeah.
Not for other things like parks or streets or any other type of...
No. Dedicated to the arts. Yeah.
The only reason why I didn't call it an impact fee was because there's a threshold on the project size. I don't know, but impact fees feel like they're attributed to everybody, but.
Now, I wasn't here when this was workshop, so excuse me if I have some additional questions, but from what I've read through, it appears to me we're basically trying to get builders to pay for art.
Well, it's culture and history, too.
Yeah.
All right, culture, history. I prefer to have roads and pipes and things of that nature. I'm also concerned on who gets to pick the art.
We have this through our presentation, but there is an arts committee that would be adopted.
What if the art is offensive to some of us?
It would be a process that would go through the art committee, and then we'll come to city council towards the end there as well.
Well, I'll listen to the rest of the presentation, but I've got to say right off the bat, this is something we should not go into at all. They do this out in LA. I had a friend who built a building, and he was required to kick over a large chunk of money. And the next thing you know, the city came in and said, you need art in the lobby, you need art on each floor, you need art in the elevator, and here's the art, whether you like it or not. And this, to me, just considering the problems this city has, what we heard this morning from the public, the art is the last thing I care about at this point.
Well,
Just
the
so you know.
alternative, Vice Mayor, is to, if we're not going to further anything for the arts, which I think that's a terrible idea, we have to have some arts, culture, and history. The alternative is to go straight to the taxpayer. So do you want it paid for by the taxpayer?
Or the alternative is to go to the public and let the public raise money and pursue the arts.
That has perpetually failed for at least the last decade.
Well, government art will fail too, and
We can take that out. So right now, that's an alternative. So if
All
a
right,
developer
let's-
doesn't want to pay the 0.5%,
Let's go through the presentation, because you hadn't heard the whole, and then we'll debate it. So let's go through, finish up the presentation.
Okay, no worries. So we would establish a public art fund. This would be for private development, redevelopment, and reconstruction, and for remodeling projects. Just mentioned brief earlier that it's equal to 1.5% of 1%, so 0.5%. The construction value of it would be at $1 million before this fee is required. There is also in here a public art maintenance fund, which is designed to specifically portion the fund to provide maintenance and upkeep of the artwork to ensure proper preservation and maintenance provided. And then all expenditures from the fund shall be approved by City Council after the recommendation of the Art and Public Places Committee. There are some exemptions to this art fund, so if you're remodeling or repairing damage by fire, flood, wind, earthquakes, or anything act of God, would be exempt. single-family and two-family housing, normal routine maintenance, so if you're repairing HVAC, plumbing, things like that, would be exempt, and then remodeling, repair, reconstruction, or additions of the existing amenity prior to the effective date of this ordinance. Oh, sorry. So there is an establishment of art in lieu of a fee, so if the developer did not want to pay that 0.5%, they are able to obtain a reimbursement or waiver of the required fee to establish public art on the development site or approved public space. The Public Art Committee shall be authorized to approve the proposed public art to be placed on private property, and the public art will be placed in public place away from the development site. Proposed location must be approved by City Council after recommendation of the committee. So if the developer chooses to provide art in lieu of paying the fee, they are to provide information to describe below any additional information requested by the city to review the application pursuant to the standards of this article. So if they were to give us, instead of paying the fee, they were to provide us some artwork, they would have to submit an application form at the time of the development permit, the schedule of the creation, completion, and installation of the public art, plans, rendering, and details. So we're looking at color rendering, site plan, proposed location, and then payment of fee of full amount of the required fee. Whoops. And then we did also add in here some standards and non-acceptable artwork. So hopefully you can kind of see here, is displayed in a visual accessible. So we do allow it to be displayed in visual accessible location, integrated into overall planning and design of the structure, integrated into overall landscaping plan, can be lighted at the discretion of the city, and then tangible creations by artists exhibiting the highest quality of skill and aesthetic principle. And then some of the non-acceptable artwork is mass-produced or standard manufacturer, reproduction of mechanical of original artwork, artwork designed by an architect as opposed to the elements created by an artist, commercial expression, and then service or utilities to operate and maintain an artwork over time. And then just we'll quickly brief on, I think I presented this back on August 13th for the Art in Public Places Committee. So it would be a part of the process would the applicant shall appear before the committee for a pre-application meeting. The committee will review the criteria, the art stance for City Council approval. We would look to establish more guidelines in this committee, and then if preferred, then there is a thing in here that does say that if this developer doesn't have an artist in line, the city is able to select and procure a public artist as well to help with this, to get this through the committee. And pretty much as just we're looking for council's action to adopt the first read of this percentage of art ordinance. Yeah.
So an architect is not an artist. I bet there's some architect that would disagree with that.
Yeah.
A government-selected artist. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with this whole thing, and I cannot support this. We should stay out of this. If somebody building a mall or somebody building a development wants to put artwork in, it's their property, it's their right. But this, to me, hitting up developers for a percentage to fund this just makes no sense to me. And I just simply cannot support this.
So thank you for the presentation. I think this is awesome. I think that this is a way to fund arts, culture, and history in our community, which we just had the conversation not just a few weeks ago about how we have our historical society camping out in what should be probably a restroom building in the back of Holland Park, whereas a fund like this can help them actually have a home somewhere and can fund the furtherance of preservation of our history in the community, which I think is vital. Arts have a great impact on especially our youth, And I think that that's incredibly important. So when I look at something like this, I'm an athlete, okay? I can't draw a stick figure. I did not grow up, it's true, it's bad. Don't get me in a hangman contest. You know, growing up, arts were never even a second thought to me. And as a council person, you know, it's hard for me to kind of put on my hat that says this is also important to the community. But when I look at the impact that it has on kids and adults as well, obviously, but you know, it's just very important. And we've seen volunteer organizations just not be able to get traction and get money in this community to really make an impact. 0.5% of commercial developments over $1 million is a drop in the bucket for those developers, but that amount of money can have a very good impact, an impactful change on our community for this specific endeavor. So I support it. I will say, you know, I hear what you're saying about forcing developers to put in art, but that would be their choice. It's an alternative, right? So if they don't want to pay the money, then they can choose to contribute the art instead. We're not telling them they have to contribute the art. We're saying this is another type of impact fee that goes to our community rather than tapping our residents, rather than trying to tax them for it. So I'm in support of this. I think there's been a lot of communities that have done it and have done it larger and have required more. I think we're requiring kind of the bare minimum. And I think that's where we should be for this. But so I thank you for this, and I hope that council will approve it.
Thank you very much for all the hard work. I know that you guys went back and you looked at all the different cities that were implementing something like this. My position is the same as Councilwoman Pontieri's. I believe that this is a way to force a development to invest in our community in addition to our impact fees, which we have maximized, and we try to get, you know, as much as possible for the impacts that these developments will have in our community. And this is going to enrich our community in a different way. We have parks and recreation. Art and cultural arts is different than parks and recreation, and they have to work, you know, in cohesion with one another. But this is a great way to actually get that money to flow. And over the last 8 years, I have seen a lot of, you know, tremendous people and organizations struggle to try to fundraise to be able to do things of this magnitude. And I think that it's going to enrich our community, and in the long run, it'll pay off, you know, dividends. And the worst that happens, I can't imagine a development that says, hey, 0.5% of my project, I don't want to build that. That's okay. If you don't want to invest 0.5% of your project in enriching the cultural arts, exactly, yeah, then that's fine. We'll find a partner that will commit 0.5% of your project to enriching our cultural arts. So thank you to staff, thank you to council, I appreciate it.
Councilman?
Yeah, so I just want to confirm here, so the exemptions, remodelings, repairs, single-family, two-family housing, normal routine maintenance, construction additions, existing amenities, things of that nature.
Yes,
So-
yeah.
So if the mayor wants to add $1 million addition to his home, it's exempt, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just, yeah. Okay, so we're talking $50,000 per million.
So if you don't mind, that's where I want to go. So you selected Sarasota because they have a similar deal. I'm not sure the comparison works for me, but Sarasota is really very different. In the last several years, to your drop in the bucket, how much money would this have generated, if any? Jason, can you take a wild guess? I'm going to guess not very much.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty minuscule.
I just want to make sure we're not chasing a dream here that's, you know, unrealistic. Or I'm not saying the concept is wrong, but I don't want to be, you know, creating an expectation here where something's going to happen and nothing's going to happen.
Mayor, City Council, if you would give me the opportunity to email that to you, I will.
Okay.
Get, how many years back would you like me to email?
Just a couple. I'm not trying to, you know, I mean, would it have generated any funds in the last couple of years?
I can pull a report out of our permitting software that will tell me the stated value for the project, and then I can use that as the basis for all the projects that were over $1 million.
Just as an example, like BJ's, for example, would that have generated this kind of money?
Yeah.
No, because
Well, it was in
the
the
impact
county.
fee went to the county, right?
It was in the
Yeah.
county, so yeah.
But if it were in the city, it would have, yeah.
No, yeah, I know.
But I'll be happy to put 2 years of data together for you.
And then to the vice mayor's point, I'm going to have to ask the question. So yes, we have to have arts and history and culture, but, where on the list of priorities does it fall? I'm not suggesting that it's not vital to the future of our community. Does it fit our priorities after what we endured, what we heard, what we listened to this morning? Is that where you want to put your 0.5%? Or is there something that's further up on the list? Because this can always happen at another time. It doesn't have to happen right now, especially if we're not generating anything right now. Just a question for debate.
I think before we can even vote on this, maybe we need to push this down the road a little bit till we get some numbers back to see what we're even talking about number-wise. But again, after what we heard this morning, this is not a priority. The fact that those in the community that have wanted to do these types of art projects have struggled to raise money tells you there's not a lot of interest in the community to spend money. People aren't reaching into their own pockets. But any money that, say, of the builder of BJ's would have donated to this, well, that's going to be reflective in price increases. They're not going to eat this. They're going to pass it on to whoever they're building for, whatever they're doing. It will be passed on ultimately to the consumer. And I just think we have bigger priorities in this city than getting involved in government art. And I have a real problem with the government stepping into this arena.
All right, sorry, this is not government art, first of all. Secondly, people are not reaching into their pockets because of everything else around them rising, and I get that, but this is not asking people to reach into their pockets. And to the point of, well, is this where we want to spend our 0.5%? We're already raising impact fees on specifically residential development on everything that we can. So if the proposal is, I don't want to do a 0.5% impact fee for the arts, then okay, fine, let's do a 0.5% impact fee for the roads. Let's do that then. If that's what the council wants to do, and if the direction is that we're not going to approve this, then I want staff to come back to us with a 0.5% impact fee for the roads or a 0.5% extra impact fee for stormwater, because I refuse to sit here and say, well, this isn't where I think our money should go, but let's not go ahead and ask them to put money anywhere. That's not okay. So I will make a motion to approve this. I think that Jason can come back to us with numbers before the second read, and if it fails on the second read because we don't think it's worth it, then it fails on the second read, but I make a motion to approve it as is.
I would second that, and also I would add in that, Councilwoman Pontieri, you're absolutely right. The fact that we have maxed out those impact fees mean that, we can't just shift around this 0.5% to, more road impact fees, for instance. We do these studies and we've pretty much maximized what we can collect, so you're absolutely right. Yeah, I'll second that.
I've got just a quick question. How do we come up with the 0.5%? Did we just model it out after Sarasota?
Modeling after some other cities, yeah. Sarasota, I think, was, again, we kind of looked at Sarasota, and that was one of those cities that have a 0.5% or 0.05%. Some do 1%, some do 2%. Yeah, we just modeled it off. We had a list of cities that we went through, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so we have options. We don't have to necessarily go with the 0.5%, right?
We don't, and I think the intent, and I might be speaking for you, James, but I know when I was looking at this, my intent was, how can we start, we got to start somewhere, right? How can we start getting money for the arts, history, and culture, but also not, to Vice Mayor's point, not impact commercial to the extent where they are legitimately going to pass it on to the consumer, because I'm sorry, I do not think BJ's is going to increase the price of a tube of toothpaste because we have ask them to pay 0.05, a half penny per $1 million, for this fee. So to me, that's why we're doing this. We can always increase it in the future, but at least we can start kicking something towards arts, history, and culture now.
How is this related to FC3 or not?
No.
So on top of this, we're doing a contribution to FC3?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, is there any room to negotiate just to get us, to, I guess, to a second reading to 0.1 instead of 0.5?
Well, a vote will get us to the second read, then we can debate and discuss it again. I'm torn. Having arts and culture is very important, I get it. I'm concerned about the timing right now, but I'm willing to go to a second read and debate it more thoroughly if I have some numbers that show that it's meaningful or not. Because if it's not meaningful, then it's just a.
And if it's not meaningful to
it's-
Councilman
it's just-
Gambaro's
it's just
point,
an
we can
effort.
increase it.
Yeah, well, or not, or make it go away. And then also, I'm sorry, the final location of the art is where?
It did say on the development, within the, it's on the public development or the private development, or can go on public land.
Within the boundaries of whatever
art district.
whatever what?
The boundaries of the art district.
So it may or may not be related to an actual construction itself. It may be located somewhere else on the other side of town.
I think we'll double check that one.
This is Patrick Kennedy. It could be located in a public space on the other side of town, on the side of the art district, or on the developer's property, the way it's written.
Is that the developer's choice, or is that up to the city or the volunteer committee?
Developer's choice at first, but then of course the city has to approve the public site if that's what they want to do.
So we basically have the government telling people what artwork to put where on their property in the end, with a government-selected artist, if they couldn't find their own artist, and their architects don't count.
Or they pay the fee.
Or they pay the fee.
Or they pay the fee.
Or they paid the fee.
For example, Jason, would the apartments here in Town Center, would they be qualified for this type of thing? So I'm sure that those were over $1 million.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I don't know, I'm just thinking about bigger development in the
Yeah,
last
the
few years.
multifamily counts, so that's huge.
And if I may, on the math, 0.5% on a $1 million project is $5,000, not $50,000.
No, it's 5.
It's 5.
It's a 0.5%.
Okay, yeah, 0.5%, yeah.
So it's there, but it's not huge.
0.5%, yeah, okay.
Well, it's not huge unless it's your money.
No, I didn't mean to say it that way, but it's
Yeah.
not big bucks.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm willing to go to a second read. I'm going to think about it and sleep on it and think about it.
But
And
I
I
think-
understand
I
the
what
government
you're
piece,
saying,
that's,
But my
yeah.
problem with second reads is one thing I've learned here. Once we get through the first read, we get through the second read.
When would the second read be?
You know, and
November 12th.
It's scheduled for the 12th, Mayor. November 12th.
All right, so you get another shot at it. But you can vote no. That's
I'm one vote
that's
out of-
no.
out of
But you get another chance to chew at it, and I may go along with you. We'll see. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Let me put this out to the public for public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item at this time? Seeing no one come forward, I'll close public comment, and I guess you better give me a roll call.
Vice Mayor Danko?
no.
Councilmember Gambaro?
Yes.
Councilmember Clufus?
Aye.
Councilmember Pontieri?
Yes.
Mayor Alfin?
Just because I'm not sure, I'll go no.
The motion passes 3-2.
Okay. We now move to our resolution number 11. I think we've already covered 10. So, Councilman, if you would.
Resolution 2024-XX approving the purchase of stormwater maintenance equipment.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Matt Mansell, your Director of Public Works. So this resolution is authorizing the Fleet Division to purchase 7 new assets for the Stormwater Department. You heard earlier today the proposal during both the Stormwater Department overview update and the loan agenda item. This would purchase those 7 items utilizing the loan funds. Now, this purchase was originally budgeted in FY '24. However, it was deferred so that we could combine the two loans to save in closing costs. And projections have been updated for FY '25 to reflect that. And these purchases would be made leveraging several piggyback contracts, just like we do our annual equipment replacement and purchase. So any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer that for you now.
This has already been budgeted, correct?
Yes, Vice Mayor, it was budgeted as part of the stormwater rate review, and then it was in the FY '24 budget, and now it has been projections forecasted in FY '25.
And it includes the cool piece of equipment that Mr. Councilman Clufus asked about last time.
Right. Now I remember.
Okay. Questions?
Nope, that's it.
Hold on a second. Did you get the money yet?
I was just making sure the
Okay.
calculations were correct from the last one.
I'm asking if there are any questions on the current resolution that we are discussing, which is the purchase of stormwater maintenance equipment, which is already budgeted.
Roger. No, Mr. Mayor, I just have a comment. I had a chance to visit with the DPW team on Friday. I got a great tour from Matt and his leadership team, and I appreciate everything you're doing with the fleet that we have, and I know you're not asking if you didn't need it, so thanks for everything you're doing.
It was a pleasure having you. The guys really appreciated you coming out, so thank you.
Thanks for your service.
Sounds like a motion to me.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion
That's
from
seconded.
Councilman and a second from Vice Mayor. I've already been out for public comment. Is there any additional discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Moving now to number 12, please.
Resolution 2024-XX approving an engineering consultant contract with CBH Incorporated for wastewater treatment facility number 1 expansion design.
Folder. Where's the main folder?
It's not, it should already be open.
While Mr. Blake is getting set up, Mayor and City Council, this is a focused topic. This is on wastewater treatment plant 1. Included in this presentation, you'll understand the timeline for design and then future construction. You'll understand where this plant, the service area that it meets, and where we've seen growth in the past 20 years. There's an analysis there. So we're hopeful to be able to be transparent to the public and answer any questions that you may have regarding this wastewater treatment plant.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Alex Blake with the City of Palm Coast Stormwater and Engineering Department, particularly in the utilities aspect. And we're going to present today something that's been probably a concern for a bit about the wastewater treatment facility number 1. This is really a continuation of a process that started and was approved by council back in 2023. In 2022, staff put together a request for statement of qualifications, put that out, selected a consultant to go forward with a study of the facility for looking at what can we do with the site, what needs to be upgraded on the current facility, what's our best usage of it, how much capacity can we build into the facility. So this is for approval for design services from the consultant. I have the consultant here, which is CPH, and a consultant that can answer some questions also. So when we talk about the wastewater treatment, we operate 2 wastewater treatment facilities. The first one, which is the oldest, is also the largest, wastewater treatment facility number 1, which is at the end of Utility Drive. Its current permitted treatment capacity is 6.83 million gallons per day. At the end of PV grade, or roughly address 400 PV grade,
is wastewater treatment facility number 2. Its current permitted treatment capacity or is functioning as a 2.0 million gallons per day. It's being expanded right now, expected to be in operation with an additional 2 million gallons a day in early 2025 or perhaps December. So our collective treatment capacity by the beginning of next calendar year, very early, should be roughly about 10.83 million gallons per day combined. Okay, but one thing too that's important to understand is looking at the area map, you can see the contributing zone approximately that goes to each facility. So in the green, you can see what goes to wastewater treatment facility 1, and in the beige or pink goes to wastewater treatment facility 2. So you can clearly see that the lion's share of capacity treatment is handled by 1. And as the city grew over numbers of years, most of the piping infrastructure and the collection infrastructure for the wastewater was built to go to 1. So wastewater treatment facility 1 will play a critical role to the city in that capability for many years to come. And the study that was approved earlier to look at the plant and treatment options determined that the facility is actually in pretty good shape. It's got some electrical things and a few equipment things that need to be changed out. I'm talking about the existing facility. Now, on our next slide here, we say, okay, well, where are we getting the flows from? You know, where's the big contributions from the flows? So when we go back to 2000, the year 2000, and look through this year, currently, maybe mid-year, 2024, Planning Department provided some information as far as ITT lots versus basically all other development. So we can see that there was approximately, in that period of time, or that 24 years, about 25,200 infill lots built on, and about 7,000 from other sources. So in that, we see that the significant amount is coming from the ITT area, right? So, and that kind of makes sense, because when we go back and look at the graphic, oops, I'm sorry. When we go back and look at the graphic, you can see that in the green, most of that is the ITT area. Now, a little bit in the beige is ITT area also, Matanzas, some of the Matanzas Woods, some of the Pine Lakes area, which was rerouted over to that facility. All right. And continue on here. So here's a graph that has some important information on it. The green line indicates the total demand for, between both facilities. What are the total collection demand? Of course, we have actual data up to about, probably mid-2024, actual plant flows. Everything else beyond that is a projection. All right, so there's different ways you can project demand. What the DEP likes us to do, Florida Department of Environmental Protection, is to utilize Bieber data, which I think all of you are fairly familiar with. And Bieber gives you brackets. So they give you a low bracket, a mid bracket, and a high bracket for rates of development. And they will give you numbers for, say, 20, 20, 20, 25. They'll go in 5-year increments typically. But they benchmark it off starting with a census, right? So the last time they did a census was 2020. So what we've shown here is a projection of using a high Bieber bracket, assuming that we're going to have, fairly robust growth and so forth, for years to come, which may or may not be accurate, right? This is just a guess, basically, an educated guess. So we're projecting this out, and then you can see where the demands are, and then where we are on the blue line is the combined capabilities between wastewater treatment plant 1 and wastewater treatment plant 2. And you can see the little bench steps in there where we've added capacity. So we've been working on adding wastewater treatment over a number of years. My understanding is that wastewater treatment plant 2 was designed at one point, and then it was tabled when there was a slowdown in the economy. Then it was picked back up because growth had started back up, and there was interest in the US 1 corridor. So we built that, and they became active in 2018. Over that period of time, starting in 2020, we realized, well, we've got to start planning to build more capacity into that facility. So we did that, got the design done, and it's under construction now. So that construction started in 2023, and we're expecting that to be done in approximately late 2022, early 2023. So that'll add another 2 million gallons. And continue on, and then of course what we're talking about now with this presentation is adding 4 million gallons per day treatment capacity to wastewater treatment facility 1. So that would jump it up by itself to 10.83 million gallons per day treatment capability over its current 6.83 million gallons per day. So combined, we would have between the two plants 14.83 million gallons of treatment per day. All right, and then we see the red dashed line is what the combined ITT build out plus everything that's been permitted up to today. Okay, so we've permitted things, right? But say you have a subdivision, you don't get that demand instantly. Like say it's a 500 unit, it takes months, maybe years to build that out. So when and where do you really need it is somewhat of just a judgment call, because you have to somewhat speculate based on numbers where you want to spend your money, when, and that kind of thing to get treatment facilities expanded. So going to this next slide, we have this broken up between each treatment facility, and primarily treatment facility 1 and treatment facility 2, where you can see where there's a prediction of demand on the red line going to treatment facility 1, and the light blue line would be the demand going to treatment facility 2. So these are, again, those zones can change, right? So you'll see one bit right around 2025, but we plan to redirect 0.8 million gallons per day from wastewater treatment facility 1 to wastewater treatment facility 2. And that's obviously right after the expansion at 2 is completed, then we're going to shift some more flows over there. There's already been about 300,000 gallons shifted over there, and then there'll be another 500,000 gallons shifted. So that buys us a little bit of gap relief there, but still leaves plant 2 in pretty good shape to provide along that corridor if there's interest growing in that. Facility 1 needs help, obviously. So we looked at that and said, well, we've got a pretty good sized site there. It's about 27 acres compared to wastewater treatment facilities 2 site, which is about 8 acres available for the treatment. And after the expansion is done early next year, that site will pretty much be built out. So that plant took a different treatment process, which we call, it's an NBR treatment. It uses membranes. It's a bioreactor. And the old plant uses an older technology, but it's still pretty good, and it uses what's called an activated sludge process. So that process takes a lot more open area because you have large open tanks and such on there. But the advantage of it is you can pump a lot of water through there under duress, right? So we get a big rainstorm come in, and I'm sure all of you have heard about some of our peak flows going through the treatment facilities, right? So the MBR plant can't really handle those big peaks like that, won't handle a real huge surge because the membranes limit that. That produces phenomenally good effluent, like it's really high quality. Such high quality that basically all we have to discharge it to a wetland, all we have to do is dechlorinate it. And so we actually have a permit for wetland discharge, for example. If the reclaim demand is less than what we're producing, we can discharge that. So that's one of the major advantages of what's called advanced wastewater treatment, which Plant 2 has, Plant 1 does not. So when we looked at this, I'll go on to the next slide. So here is wastewater treatment facility 1, and you can see in the dashed white area there is the existing facility. And again, that site's approximately 27 acres. So it has some pretty good open space there, which is nice because it can accommodate the expansion. So when the consultant looked at this over a period of time, they came up with several options. They worked with staff, and it was originally the plant, long-term wise, was only going to go to 9.1 million gallons by putting another oxidation ditch and clarifiers train in there for treatment. But they determined that, hey, you can get 4 million gallons out of here. Well, what is that going to take? Okay, so we'll go into that slide in a little bit. But the important thing is that this plant will still function as the primary hub. This does not, anything that I'm presenting here today does not take into consideration any needs that would be there for long-term wise for the western expanse. Okay, I just want to make that clear, because you might see some other presentation information from the utility director that might have a little bit different projections that does account for some of that. So anyway, so we've got that. And so how the process started, we talked about that a little bit just a second ago. The engineering study was initiated. We went through and did evaluation of upgrade options. And then it was decided, well, let's go ahead and go to 4MGD. Let's build in some capacity, get a little ahead of as much as we can on the site. Let's max the site out and utilize as much. And while we're at it, they suggested that we convert the plant to an AWT standard. Right now, that's advanced waste treatment, wastewater treatment. Currently, the FDP is not mandating an AWT, but it's become an industry standard, and basically all the new plants have been going to that in anticipation of upcoming regulations. So it gives us a lot more flexibility treating the effluent to a higher level. And because it is a pretty big chunk of the total cost, it's like about 90 versus the whole 240. I'd like to have one of my consultants come up and talk about the AWT process a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, Scott Brightenstein, CPH. Yeah, just touch base a little bit on that. Yeah, so the rules, House Bill 64 passed in 2021. The regulations required that advanced treatment is implemented and in effect by 2032. So we got a little bit of time, but as you can see with the expansion and everything that's going on and the growth in the city, that this time is of the essence. So as a part of the expansion, it was a good time to go ahead and increase to AWT. So we made the recommendation to go forward with a 5-stage Bardempo process, which would bring it to a higher level of treatment, also reducing total nitrogen and total phosphorus, which is a big thing in Florida now. So that's kind of the recommendation, is to move the plant to a 5-stage, the new 4 million, and then do some improvements to the existing plant so that the water quality could be the same and we can merge them.
May I ask a question? Does this provide, and I kind of extrapolated this out, but does the AWT process present us an extra level of resilience capabilities if we need to discharge the water into wetlands? Is that why that's a big thing?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so in the case of...
Kind of meet with what's going on with wastewater plant number 2.
Yeah, so in that type of scenario, if we were to ever reach those limits and we had an AWT type solution, we would be able to mitigate that risk by discharging into our wetlands after a dechlorination process?
That's correct.
Understood. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so what the objective by the DEP has been is to eliminate non-beneficial waters. So once we treat to an AWT standard, it can be considered at least not a non-beneficial water, right? But it will continue to provide, reclaim effluent for irrigation and that type of thing. But it's better for the environment overall because it's a little higher parameters, to meet and so forth. But the cost of wastewater treatment Infrastructure has gone up tremendously in the last couple of years, and that's another thing, if there was questions about that. That's, the consultant is doing projects all around the state and discuss with, different operations and so forth around the state, and this is just what we're seeing. So it's gone for probably like a $10 million per million gallon treatment up to like 60. So it's gone up crazy prices, and the electrical systems and the equipment is a lot to do with it. Of course, there's a ton of concrete in those constructions and a lot of steel and all that, and contractors need to cover their costs too. So all these things are factoring into these at these costs. But that's why you're seeing such a big number. And Councilman mentioned earlier trying to go request some money from the state level. We also put in an application through the DEP for a grant. We put the full price of the plant in there, but the AWT piece is like about 90 million. So, if we get that, that's also helpful. We will probably not get a word on that from the state until somewhere between February and March is what we are understanding now. So, but we are going after other funding sources. And just to be clear, as we've typically done most of our plant projects, whether it's water or wastewater, we've sought a state revolving fund loan, which is typically 0% or very, very, very low over a 20-year period of time. But the DEP does have a limitation on its distribution for any one project. So they can do up to $20 million per year. Okay, so, in the past that has not been an issue, but now clearly we have to seek other means to try to cover the funding needs. So this slide shows you in the gray the existing facility, and in the light blue what would be added. This is what the plant looks like, and we have a 30% design right now, which happened with the consultant developed what's called a PDR, was a preliminary design report, and that helps us engage the DEP and get permitting and so forth rolling. All right, so you can see most of the expansion structure will happen on the north end of the plant. As you're seeing on the left side of the page is the north end of the plant. We intend to put an equalizer tank, a 2.5 million gallon equalizer tank, which is that lower circle on the image there, lower left hand. That will help a lot with storm surges, because what that does is think about it like an overflow bladder or something. So you get this rush from a big rainstorm come in, hits, and it'll stack that up and allow that to trickle out over slower periods of time so the treatment can occur better. And also in the upper right, suggesting to add another 6 million gallon ground storage tank, which we have already a current 6 million gallon ground storage tank, and that's for treated effluent. So that'll store up. So as we grow as a city, we're also expanding our reclaim system, and a lot of our new developments have reclaim irrigation system in them, which is good. Because that offsets the usage of groundwater and other water that we use for potable. So we want to have more of that. So if we go through some dry months like we did about 4 or 5 months ago, we'll have plenty of storage there. So that would be part of that. And let's see. Okay, so going back to the AWT. So this slide shows what parts of the existing facility will have modified components to it added to create the AWT treatment. And it's kind of hard for you to see the little details on there. I won't go too much into that unless there's questions, but there's some pre-anoxic zones and so forth for these extra tanks on either side of the existing oxidation ditches. But so, yeah, there's some structures that have to be constructed along with the new, the existing, and also some internal walls that have to be built to get proper mixing and other treatment aspects. So that's a bit of that's quite a bit of work, but we think it's worthwhile. So the expansion itself is just this. These are all the components in this slide. but you're saying everything in here will just be the expansion components to get to the 4 million gallons extra per day for treatment. So we've got some clarifiers, the EQ tank, digesters and so forth, so. All right, so looking at a project timeline, so we kind of really initiated the initial design, because remember, we have about 30% design now, because we did the PDR and all that kind of stuff. So we got that ball rolling. So we're looking to engage, moving forward with the design to get the actual design completed. But we also want to go out for a CMAR, which is a construction manager at risk. It's very similar to design build. The main difference being that the consultant doesn't work underneath the contractor. The consultant works directly for the owner. So you have a contractor working for the owner, and you have the consultant, the engineering consultant.
Just a quick question, if I can.
Yes, sir.
So we got 30% of the design, so to do the other 70% will take 2 years?
Well, I'll let you guys explain.
I mean, I don't know what's involved with designing this, I'm just asking.
Because there's two components. We have the expansion and the renovation. So the goal is to, once we get the construction manager on board, right now we're going to go full steam ahead on the full design, you know. And then as we're working to get the construction manager at risk firm on board, they are going to work with the construction manager on board and start designing the expansion piece first and other long lead time items, because the goal is to get the plant online as quick as possible. So as we work together, they're going to be working on portions of the design, expediting those pieces first to expedite, and then we'll be coming back and finishing up the remainder of the design, and obviously the rehab will come last. They'll both be all moving forward together because they need to integrate and work together, but that's the intent, is we want to focus on the items that we can construct early,
Okay,
and the items that have long lead times.
So we could start construction in a year?
That's the intent, is next fall we can start doing something out there, or procuring long lead time materials, those sorts of things.
But you wouldn't be online for at least 4 years?
Yeah, our goal is the end of calendar year 2028 is our target right now.
And I would just add the caveat, if funding is secured, right? We need additional.
You need the funding, obviously.
Correct.
We would need the funding available for next fall to keep this moving.
Thanks.
I've got some questions over here. So, based on your slide, you're saying that we'll have an additional 2 million gallons per day at wastewater treatment plant number 2, effective January, February of '25.
That's correct.
So right off the bat, we're going to have 2 million in extra capacity. Okay, that's a good news story. Okay, so our current plan is that wastewater 1 is at 6.8 capacity, correct?
Correct.
With the old technology.
Correct.
Okay, and we're saying with this expansion project, it'll take us up to 10.83?
Correct.
Plus the 4 at wastewater 2, so you're talking 14.83
Combined, correct.
in 2029, okay? City manager, we got up to what, 22 million gallons per day?
We got to, just at wastewater treatment plant 1, we had up to 17 in 1 day.
In 1 day?
Yes,
That was during Hurricane Milton.
right.
Yes.
So can I just, just to help with average flow. So in June, at wastewater treatment plant 1, we were at 5.5, 5.8 million gallons per day. June was remarkably dry. We were having water challenges at that time. And in October, during Hurricane Milton, was our highest of seeing the plant at 17 million gallons per day at that. So an average day, you're between 5.5, 6.5, right? Depending on what natural weather that is. But for an extreme weather event, you're at 17 million at plant 1.
Okay, I guess my point is what we're proposing right now doesn't meet that extreme number.
Correct.
Okay.
I
No,
don't-
you're not going to build a wastewater treatment facility to take on peak wet weather conditions. What is built into that is there's a hydraulic rating for the facility and there's a treatment rating for the facility. So actually, Plant 1 has about a 20 million gallon currently hydraulic capability. Okay, so it can pass the flow through there, But you can't sustain that for days on end, right? You're not going to take that on day after day because you won't be able to make parameters for treatment. So that's why there's the permit from the DEP is stipulated for annual average day flow, which is a running average. So if you look at the annual average day flow in January, it's very likely to be a very different number than the annual average day flow in March, because it looks at that point in time, the previous 12 months average, okay? So it's a moving average. And so yes, the peak flows, the hydraulic flows are not the same as the treatment, but we know we need more treatment capabilities as well.
And this new technology that we're putting in, proposing to put in wastewater treatment 1, does it allow us, and not just the hydraulic flow, but the treatment flow to increase?
Well, that is the main focus, is the treatment flow. We're building in extra treatment capacity and also suggesting to have a higher level of treatment.
Okay.
To meet objectives from the state/DEP or EPA.
Well, just like I said earlier today, I want to make sure we're taking a strategic approach and not trying to fight the last battle, and so those points on the hydraulic, pass through with the water and things of that nature, those are good points to make sure that, I didn't know that. That's new to me. So, okay, I've got more questions, but I'll wait till your pie chart. Thank you.
Can I just piggyback off of those questions while we're on this subject, if you don't mind? Because I am concerned about the data that was thrown out. I don't want to jump ahead in presentations, but we're being forced to enter into agreement with FDEP because we were over capacity for so many days. So I understand June may have been a dry month, but there's a reason why we are now forced to enter into this agreement. So what are we looking at as far as average daily flow, or I guess, what were we running at that forced us into that agreement? And for how many days?
Well, it would have been over 6.83 million gallons per day, right? Because that's the annual average day permitted treatment capability. That's the permitted treatment, not the hydraulic pass-through or any of that kind of thing.
Right.
It's the treatment capabilities. So so you get a big storm surge, right? Or we get, we had about a week's worth of rain off and on, right? That total, we heard some numbers like 20 inches. Okay, so because the system itself, and it's going to be common to any city this size, and some smaller, some bigger, you're going to have inflow and infiltration issues, right? We know we have a bunch of PEP tanks, and PEP tanks are notorious for having I&I problems. But so say you had 2 back-to-back dry months, you'd see that annual average day flow drop way down, right? Because you don't have any base flow going in there, just purely raw sewage, okay? So you might even see that number come in like as low as like 6 million gallons. And that would tell you, hey, this is truly what our community's making for sewage, that at least the area that's being contributed here. So then you start getting a lot of rainfall and so forth. It builds up, the flows start coming up. Well, now they're taking those numbers and averaging those peaks in with the rest of your yearly numbers. So that brings that ramps that up. So now because what I said is the annual average day flow is a moving average. So you get a big event, you get a whole bunch of rainfall, now all of a sudden you see a lot of flow coming into the plant. So those numbers will come up, and if the DEP sees that for a certain amount of time, specified time, that you're over your permitted amount, then they get concerned. They oftentimes will also look at 3-month averages. So it's like this month plus the last 2 months. So what are you averaging over that? Okay, how many months in a row has that occurred that you're exceeding that permitted amount? So that's when they engage in that. So. Hopefully that's kind of explains some of that.
Before Milton, though, what was our daily average?
What's our daily average at the wastewater treatment facility, like before the storm came in?
Yes.
So, Danny.
Plant, total treated, what plant?
Oh, wastewater treatment plant 1.
Our total,
I know Jason had a chart with all of this, because I've seen it like 4 times.
Oh, no.
So, average annual is, we do have daily counts, but average annual is measured monthly.
Okay.
Okay, so for September, this is just treatment plant 1. Okay, so for September, it was 8.7 rainy month. For August, it was 5.9. For July, 6.0. For June, 5.5. For May, 5.6. For April, 5.7. For March, 6.7. For February, 6.8. For January, 7.
Okay. So that's just for wastewater treatment plant 1 at
Right.
our current, without any growth right now?
Correct, yep. So those are the averages, and I didn't count how many of those were below or above the 6.83, but it was about half.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Minus
Thank you.
any new growth since then, too. Gotta figure that
And
out.
Yes,
the-
yes.
And so far in October, it's 10.8.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's. And then this last slide is just showing where approximately the funding split is coming from. And as we've seen, the ITT lots had the lion's share in there, but I think Carl worked on figuring out the funding breakages here. So we had about 60% of the project would be funded through capital funds, and then the rest would be R&R monies for the 40%.
That's where I'm going to jump in with my questions here. So this is the utility R&R funds, that's projected or current rate? Or would it be any, are you saying that you're expecting projected increases or current rate?
This is in the current fiscal year 25 budget for the design. This is only design dollars. So as we move forward to fund the construction, then that is when we'll get the construction dollars of the breakdown between rehabbing and converting the existing plant and then the expansion costs. Those will be broken out separately. And we'll be able to identify what those costs are and how those will need to be funded with a rate increase and a loan to cover those costs.
Okay. And,
but this design in both funds is in the current approved budget.
okay. For the construction though, do you anticipate these kayak funds to still be needed in order to fund the project?
Yeah, the estimated cost was $240 million for the entire project. I want to say $90 million is our budget, high-level budget number now for the existing conversion, and then $150 million for the expansion.
Okay. So, well, I think that's an important point because so kayak, I'm still the new guy, right? Impact, those are the type of impact fees, right? So if for some reason those things were to stop for any period of time, we wouldn't be able to fund this 60% or the $150 million.
Yeah, you talked, as we jump ahead to our next item, we're going to talk about the gap analysis, and part of the gap analysis is working with our financial advisors to determine, usually you can't pledge those capacity fees to fully pay back the loan, because you can't project your growth. So they're going to say, okay, we can use 25 of your projected growth, or whatever number, that's what they're going to tell us, of impact fees can cover the loan costs. The remainder loan is going to have to be covered by rates.
Okay, so I guess my point here is if those fees were to stop for any period of time, it would jeopardize our ability to pay for the construction of wastewater treatment plant number 1.
Well, the point is they shouldn't, they could, yes. If you put in moratorium and we're using those funds to pay the loan, then that would be a problem. Now, if construction died off and nobody built, it all depends how we fund the loan, and that's what we need the financial advisor through to work with our rate consultant on our gap analysis to identify, is it 10%, 20%, 40%? How much of our capacity fees do the lending institutions or bonding companies, will they allow or recommend to be a safe bet to move forward, and what risk are they willing to take? So we obviously want to get a good rate on our loan, so we don't want to say, hey, we want to use 50% of the capacity fees. We probably won't get anyone to loan us money. Yeah. So what's a good number? What's the recommendation? And that's what we're trying to utilize in our next agenda item, is when we do the gap analysis study to get that information.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilman, what's your concern about those fees disappearing? Or not being available?
Well, I just wanted to point out that if, the future council decides to move forward with putting a moratorium on building because of the pressure that is
So
put on the system.
the percentage of it?
The
That would be
percentage, yeah,
developed
which
for a new, okay, I got it. Understood.
$100 million.
I got it.
That action could potentially affect our ability to repair.
It changes that slice of the pie, yep, got it.
does.
Thank you very much, so.
Understood.
Thank you for the clarification.
So that was the last slide.
So
Except, I'm sorry, just one other comment. So with regard to new development, so you have some number of development in the queue, which goes out, I can't begin to tell you what that volume is or how many, but it's some number of years in terms of phasing and everything else, just as a
Okay.
as a footnote.
Thank you.
That kind of goes to my question. When we look at the chart that shows what you're projecting as our growth on the capacity needs charts, what are you using? Yeah, those.
This
That-
slide or the one before?
Yeah, I
Slide?
think
Okay.
it would be, I was just about to ask.
Yeah,
I think it's a school-
again, that, what this is, it's a combination of historic flow data, right? Because we meter flows at the plant. So we have the actual flows that go in and out of the plant. And then anything that's projected is based on the Bieber numbers, which is the Bureau of Economic, pardon me for not remembering the rest of the acronym, but it's done out of the University of Florida, and they do population studies and have a variety of other analysis that they do throughout the state of Florida, and they will give population projections for the county. We know that we're typically about 80% of the county's population, right? So we convert that over, and then we look at, okay, well, they give you a low projected growth, a middle of the road growth, and a high level growth. So what we do is we take that number, and how this has been projected is using high growth. Market wise, it may not sustain that, but we're just looking at kind of, hey, what is a potential worst case scenario? And then we know what our gallons per ERU are roughly, and we multiply that time, do a population conversion to ERUs, and then project it out based on that demand, and that's how you get that demand curve.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So we're just looking for, go to the last slide, Alex. It's approval of a contract, unless there's any other questions.
Council members, questions? Does that?
I have none.
Good. All right, then let me put this out for public comment. Are there, yes, ma'am?
Can it please be clarified where the second plant would be located? I didn't quite catch that on the map.
Well, okay, let me go back to this. The second plant is already existing.
It's already existing?
Yes, we're
Okay.
expanding that plant. Okay, so this map, see the tan color?
I do.
And it points to there, so it's at the end of PV grade,
So that's on the, okay.
right off of US
Okay,
1.
it's PV,
Yeah, it's kind of
okay.
out there, not a lot of people know about it. We also have a water treatment plant on that same site, so.
Very good.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So coming back to the dais then, so just a comment. So my comment earlier today about the gap between expectation and the community's expectation. A whole group left out of here today thinking that perhaps there is no plan, and yet, in fact, that we're sitting here going through what is a plan. And that's just something to be thinking about for the future. That group that left here today probably may never know that there is, in fact, a plan in play that is being, discussed to some extent. Just a
Leslie's got to
point.
go tell them all.
What's that?
Leslie's got to go tell them all now.
Maybe, okay. Anyway, so we're back to the dais. I would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Councilman Pontieri, a second from Vice Mayor Danko. Any additional discussion? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just for point of clarification, so the full budget is not 5 million, or the full allocation or approval is not just 5 million,
It is to cover the design exposure and potentially any construction admin-related
So
services.
there's an additional 200,000? Is it 5,200,000?
We budgeted 5.2 million, but we negotiated our fee down to 5 million, so we're not using all of our budgeted funds.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Good enough?
I'm good.
Okay, I think all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your presentation. Moving next to item number, okay, 13.
Resolution 2024-XX approving piggybacking the City of Bartow contract with Fratellis Financial Consultants for strategic action plan and utility gap rate study.
While Amanda is getting started, City Council, this was supposed to be on your agenda last week for your workshop. Amanda's going to review the consent decree that we have, that we're actively negotiating with DEP. Also, Mayor, to your point, we're putting together a utility action plan of how to address these issues and challenges. We're also being proactive with wastewater treatment plant 1, right? Our consultants told us that it needed to be done by 2032, and we're doing it now in 2024, 2025. So it's reactive, but also proactive at the same measure. So Amanda's going to review this consent decree as well as our action plan. And then as part of your strategic action plan, City Council, you asked us to do a specific utility strategic plan, and that's how we move forward in the utility, et cetera. So Amanda's going to explain all of that, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Amanda Reese, Utility Director, and Carl Cody's here with me to answer any questions at the end of the presentation that you might have. I will be presenting the utility action plan that was initiated in September of 2024. This plan will serve as a roadmap for the future of our utilities, outlining the steps necessary for growth and sustainability. The success of many of these initiatives will depend on the resources available to support critical infrastructure projects. The timeline for the utility action plan, July of 2024, we received a consent decree draft from the Department of Environmental Protection. In August of 2024, we sent back a modification request to DEP from Palm Coast. Since August of 2024, we have been going back and modifying just little instances of maybe a discrepancy or trying to understand their wording in some areas. So we don't have a draft to sign yet, but we should be expecting one in the next 2 weeks, I'd imagine, to sign. So September of 2024, we commenced our utility action plan, which consists of presenting the utility rate study gap analysis and a strategic plan proposal resolutions to City Council, with the intention of bringing back the results from the utility rate gap analysis study and presenting that to City Council in March of 2025 for a utility rate increase approval. What is the Palm Coast Consent Decree? It's a legal document formalizing a program to improve wastewater system performance and complete wastewater treatment plant number 1 rehab and expansion by 28. And who issues the consent decree? The Florida Department of Environmental Protection. Why is Palm Coast receiving a consent decree? The wastewater treatment treatment facility, that's wastewater treatment plant number 1, has been operating at or over the permitted annual flow of 6.83 MGD at times during the last 12 months. Our records indicate that was 4 months out of the 12 last months. The way DEP had written it in the consent decree indicated 12 months, but it might have just been wording and sentencing, so we're waiting back for those results of that fine detail. Also, there have been recorded sanitary sewer overflows that occurred from the wastewater collection system. Utility staff has maintained consistent communication with the Department of Environmental Protection regarding instances of operating at or above the permitted capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. In collaboration with our engineering and utility teams, we have successfully worked to alleviate capacity constraints at wastewater treatment plant number 1 by diverting flow to wastewater treatment plant number 2. Phase 1 of the redirection, completed in December of '23, diverted approximately 250,000 gallons per day, and phases 2 and 3 will be implemented after the expansion of wastewater treatment plant number 2 is finalized, and we expect to divert an additional 550,000 gallons per day. Consent decree mandates. The consent decree gives parameters for how the wastewater section will evaluate its operation and gives specific deadlines for plans and improvements. The three main mandates that the consent decree has are that we will submit a plan to FDEP to meet our permit requirements. It also stipulates penalties for wastewater treatment plant effluent exceedances and sanitary sewer overflows. And in lieu of fines, Palm Coast will submit infrastructure projects to be completed. The utility action plan consists of approving both the utility rate gap analysis and the utility strategic plan together to produce a cohesive plan to outline how we will set our priorities for the next 5 years. The strategic plan will help guide investments, allocate resources, and provide a structure for annual progress reviews and updates to assure long-term goals and objectives are being achieved. The utility key takeaways, the consent decree is the commitment to deliver infrastructure improvement projects by specified deadlines, and the consent decree will contain Palm Coast's unique scope of work that we've proposed to DEP to get approval for. The rate gap analysis needs to be completed to fully fund consent decree projects, and also we need a evaluation of utility service fees that we discussed before that were for specific customer requests, administrative fees, and meter installation fees that haven't been updated, some of those in over a decade. So we can recoup our costs on those items. The utility strategic plan will provide a roadmap for Palm Coast Utility Department, and it will be our communication piece, and it ensures alignment all the way from the frontline staff up to elected officials. The utility rate gap analysis. The utility service fees must be evaluated so corrective action can be taken to recover utility costs for many services, including meter installation, site visits, and turnoffs. And infrastructure projects will need to be properly funded by strict deadlines to meet the consent decree requirements. We need to evaluate the rates to issue future debt to meet the near-term capital requirements. A study is needed to evaluate the feasibility of implementing the capital improvement program. For a utility rate study to be successful, it needs to identify current costs and revenues. Since the original study was completed, many changes have occurred in utility operating costs, and additional customers have joined the utility system. And as Alex stated before, we're also seeing a shift in the rising costs of water and wastewater treatment plant expansions. Postponing action today does not save in the long term. Some of the actions could result in the following: Deferred maintenance can increase the risk of infrastructure deterioration and bring costly repairs in the long term. Inadequate funding can force inefficient operations, raising operational expenses while reducing system efficiencies. And neglecting infrastructure upgrades can result in regulatory violations and extend our consent decree timeline. The Utility Strategic Plan, the last part of the Utility Action Plan. Utilities don't have unlimited resources. There isn't enough money, enough people, enough time, and enough organizational focus to move in all directions at once. This strategic planning process will engage different stakeholders with different perspectives about the direction that the utility should go, and helps us to set priorities for what the organization can realistically accomplish. And we will be, during that process, we'll be evaluating what do we know is true today, what do we hope will be true in the future, and what must go well now in order to make that future a reality. Part of the value of strategic planning is that it's a communication tool. And I think that it will help us align, from the frontline folks all the way up to the council, how we want to move forward as a community and what are the important items that we want to put on our list to accomplish in the next 5 years. So today, we're asking to approve the funding for the utility rate gap analysis and the utility strategic plan, providing the framework to proceed with the utility action plan.
Thank you for the explanation.
Okay. Questions?
I have none.
I have two. The slide that says, that lists the consent decree mandates stipulates penalties for wastewater treatment plant effluent exceedances and sanitary sewer overflows. So does that mean that while we're in the consent decree, if we have the same type of violations, we will incur penalties?
They will assess on a yearly basis. We've discussed it might not be, on an instance basis, but on an annual basis. So if we do have SSOs, they will be fined and assessed on an annual basis. However, you can submit projects in lieu of fines. So we will be submitting the projects in lieu of the fines.
Right, but the way I understand that is we're submitting projects in lieu of fines that we could have received for going over and having these SSOs in the previous 12 months, not moving forward. So does it still apply moving forward? So in other words, while we're working on those projects, if we continue to violate, can we continue to get penalized?
We can continue to submit projects the entire time.
Which is going to cost us more money either way, right?
Well, correct.
Can you submit the same
I
project? Can you submit the same projects? I see what you're asking, absolutely. So you have a $20 million project, you wipe all the fines away, but then you catch more as you're building this thing. But we didn't get 20 million in lieu of fines, that's not the project. So these new ones, can you use the same project and say, hey, while we were building this thing, we did get more fines, but we haven't burned down our $20 million worth of investment?
So the initial fine that the consent decree gives, we have to present a project in that amount. And then moving forward throughout the consent decree, if we do get assessed SSOs, which would have associated fines, we would submit projects in lieu of paying those fines.
Completed projects?
We have to submit the project to them for approval that it meets the criteria. So we have a couple in mind right now that are sitting on the shelf waiting to go in case, as we sign, that we're looking at that annual, I guess, review period, if you will.
Yeah.
And then we would submit the projects to them in lieu of paying those fines that would be calculated on that annual basis.
I don't think the intent is to use past projects, because these are new SSOs that occurred, so they're looking for, what are you going to do to your system to help prevent these in the future? So they're looking for new additional improvements.
It is current projects too, and they have to run and be completed in a certain timeline.
Right.
We have to submit them to them for approval, so it cannot be past projects, it has to be current projects that are done on their criteria.
And these aren't in the millions of dollars, these are more $100,000 or $200,000 of projects, right?
Either way, I mean, they
Yeah.
still add up, right? And the problem is, I don't, to me, this isn't an if. We will have more SSOs. We will. It's a when. And so I'm wondering how we stop the bleeding while we're trying to, rectify the.
A lot of these improvements we're proposing are like R&R type projects, where we're doing lining of some manholes or pipes, and so, which we're restricted based on our current rates. So an increase in rates will help benefit the R&R fund, so we can do more R&R projects that will help reduce these SSOs.
But the difference in my mind is, because I hear you, I mean, we need to do these projects anyways, right? But now we're bound to a decree, a timeline, and who is going to feel the financial burden of that? Our taxpayers. And there's even more pressure on them now, because now we have to get these done in a certain timeline. So I'm just looking for some type of light at the end of the tunnel that says, we know that we've had all these SSOs previously. While we're complying with this consent decree, which we can hopefully get out from under, rather than continuing to exacerbate the situation, what are we doing in the meantime to reduce or eliminate the SSOs?
I think that there's a couple of projects in the R&R section, like lining of manholes and those types of things. But remember that the R&R budget is defined by the rates. And so a more robust I&I plan would be coming from an approval of increase of rates, so we could have the capital monies to do those types of projects.
Okay.
And we do have one major capital project that was recently approved by council, the Old Kings Road Force Main upsizing, that serves the P section where we have a lot of those occur. When that gets completed, that'll be a big benefit.
And what's the timeline on that completion?
I believe that those were our American Rescue Act funds, and I believe we awarded the contract already. It's probably about a year-long project. I don't know if Alex is still back there, but I believe we've already issued the contract, so probably by this time next year.
Okay.
Around.
And then my other question was, I know we're getting this plan, this roadmap, but do we know if we have funding to then implement it? Because I think the last thing we need is another study that's going to collect dust on a shelf. So is there some type of estimation as to what you all plan to do with the plan, and if we have funding already set aside in anticipation of it?
Well, I think our plan, we're going to work with the consultant to make it feasible, right? And we're also going to be looking at the trends that are affecting us, growth, and trying to prepare for those things with the resources that we do have. I think that's the goal, because we don't have unlimited resources, but we do have some, and we need to plan properly to use them in the best way to achieve the goals that we need to accomplish.
Okay, so that's perfect, because that's what I was looking for. I mean, we don't need the Taj Mahal of facilities, right? What is reasonable here, and based on, we obviously don't want to have to, we know we're going to have to raise rates, we have to, it is what it is, it's coming down the pipeline, no pun intended. Nick. But I want to make sure that we're being reasonable, and I don't want to say checking the consultant, but leveraging expectations properly with the consultant in that regard.
Sure, and part of that study too, we will be interviewing groups of stakeholders, so the new city council will get to meet and let them know what their vision is for what the utility will accomplish in the next 5 years, and also employees, so it takes a lot of different focus groups on what will be the end of what our priority list will look like.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So a couple questions. Thanks for the clarification on the consent decree, and Councilwoman Pontieri, I think that's a great point on spending project dollars in lieu of an actual fine. I think that's an important point. So your utility rate gap analysis, okay? So I just want to be clear, you're going to be looking at not just wastewater treatment one, or you're going to be looking at that analysis across the board? Because I know other departments get allocations from the utility rate. Is that true?
Yeah, we completed a full rate study update or analysis earlier this calendar year. And there were some assumptions that were made in there. At that time, we only approved the CIAC fee increase. And there's been several items that have impacted this. What the gap analysis is going to do is look at the overall capital plan and then the fees. It's going to use the existing data, to review it high level to see if there's any items in there that need to be updated or corrected, but it's really looking at the capital improvement plan with updated numbers. We had put in for a lot of appropriations that were partially funded, then some of them were vetoed. So with loss of some grants and appropriations that we were hoping to get, again, with some other grants, 10 million for pipelining that didn't come through, we have to now fund those a different way. So with some grants we didn't get, rising project costs, increased costs for this one for adding additional capacity. Originally it was only going to be like 2 million, now it's 4. So that's really what they're going to be studying, analyzing that piece of, it'll be like an exhibit to the rate study that was done earlier this calendar year, looking at that piece of the rate study.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. My last question is, having led and commanded maintenance organizations all around the world, deferred maintenance can, in my estimation, can no longer be an option. And so when you're looking at these projects that you're putting forward, I know you're trying to respond to the SSO challenges. Do you have on the shelf deferred maintenance, right? Because you guys said it during presentation that there was maintenance that has been deferred that will be embedded it or will be looked at as part of your analysis for the gap.
Yeah, we have those. Back when the rates weren't approved, we had to take our R&R plan and push things out and unfund certain projects in our R&R fund because the funding wasn't there. So we already have projects that we took off or moved out that we know are needed now, but there's just wasn't funding for them.
Okay, and that's not specific to wastewater treatment plant one?
That's system-wide.
System-wide, okay. All right, thank you. No other questions?
So Mayor, just a timeline on when this is going to come back for the public. We would probably issue notice in utility bills around December, January, and then it will become before the council in late February, March. And that scope is included in your agenda packet.
And the direction that staff is looking for today?
Approval on the piggyback contract to move forward with the gap analysis and the strategic plan.
May I ask one more question?
Sure.
Is this now becoming, are there other communities in the same type of situation because of the enhanced water, rain in Florida? Is this a common thing? How many other places are we piggybacking with for this type of gap analysis?
Sanford did a utility strategic plan. Now, are you talking about specifically the gap analysis or the strategic plan?
My question is kind of cloudy in my head. Basically, is this an issue that is happening all over the state?
I mean, a strategic plan is separate for me from the gap analysis.
Okay.
I think the gap analysis is needed, because you want your utility rate study to be the closest time period to the increase of rates, if that's what you do, so you can look at the full picture of the revenues and the operation costs. And when they change, you want to make a good decision.
Yeah.
So that's what they're going to take a look at again in the gap rate analysis.
And just to touch upon that, like our capacity impact fees, that's usually part of the rate study analysis. We look at the fees, the capacity charges, as well as your rates, those three components together. And so typically you're looking at those every 4 to 5 years, or if there's a drastic change in the market, which like we've seen in our capital project costs. So that's usually the timing. Now the consent decree, if you're talking about that, there's other communities, around us that also have received consent decrees, especially when you go through rapid growth and high periods of rain and whatnot. It is something that we're not the only ones, I guess.
That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
All right, I would open up this item for public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to comment on this item at this time. Seeing no one come forward, I'll come back to the dais for discussion and a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
I have a motion from Councilwoman Pontieri to approve, a second from Councilman Gambaro. Any additional discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Marcus, you want to? Number 14?
Resolution 2024-XX approving a master service agreement with the Southern Group of Florida Incorporated to provide state lobbying services.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, Jason DiLorenzo, Chief of Staff. In August, procurement put out an RFP for state lobbying services. We had 4 bidders, the Southern Group of Florida, Gray Robinson, the Pittman Law Group, and Sunrise Consulting Group. Independent selections were done by a committee of 3. And the Southern Group was selected unanimously out of that group. I don't have a presentation for you. The annual contract is $72,000. It's a 3-year, it's our standard 3-year contract with 2 1-year, with the ability to extend 1 year at a time for 2 consecutive years at the city's sole option.
Questions from city council members?
Where do I start? What was the bid?
I'm sorry?
What was the amount?
$72,000.
$72,000. And what did we pay last year?
$60,000.
Ray Robinson's, what was their bid?
Oh, not sure I have that in mind. It was less. I think it was around 52.5 is.
I mean, we've used this group. They came, they showed up recently. I think they answered a lot of our questions.
I think we've been with the Southern Group for 6 years.
Is it 6?
I believe this is the 3rd contract.
Yeah. That's all I have.
I'm not in favor of going 3 years. I was not happy last year with the performance and the fact that we lost out, and we can talk about until the cows come home what the governor did as far as vetoing water projects and all of that. I get it. It's not lost on me. We're in a dire way, and if I hear one more time, well, you can apply for a grant for that, miss me with that, because grants are limited. We don't meet certain criteria for some of our projects. They're competitive. We need to be focusing on infrastructure. I want the Southern Group to earn years number 2 and 3. So
I would agree with you on that, just so you know.
thank you. I appreciate that. So, I mean, I think that we need to do a 1-year contract with, if it needs to be 4 1-year terms to renew, fine. You know, give them an opportunity to earn all 5 years, but I am not in favor of giving them another 3-year contract.
I'm okay with the terms of the contract. I think Southern Strategy, even though I wasn't happy with some of the vetoes that the governor had, I think they are the strongest lobbying group in Tallahassee. I'm impartial on whether it's 1 year, 3 years. They've been our lobbyists now for the better part of 6 years, and I was part of the council that brought them on originally. They brought us the most money to the city of Palm Coast historically over the past 6 years than we've ever seen, so I'm okay with it.
I agree that it should be year by year. Every year they have to produce results for us. Great that they did, last year. They brought us in money, but they have to continue to do that. And then, down the road, who's lobbying for us on a federal basis? Is that something we want to consider? Doing the best I can right now to help out with that, but, I don't know if that's a contract we need to have going forward, but, lobbyists should be results driven, and they should be reviewed on a yearly basis.
And did they bring us that money, or was it Paul Renner that had a lot to do with it, right?
But who funded his campaign?
Yeah.
So
But-
that's-
It was Jason.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So I'd make a motion to accept this with a modification to a one-year contract.
Let me, okay, go ahead.
I'll
Go ahead with the
second.
motion. I did have a question. Are they amenable to one-year contracts as far as you know?
That's what I was going to ask.
I'm not sure, sir. I don't know if Mr. Duffy had I think we were making eye contact. Because of the contract is over the manager's threshold, this has to come back to you annually. So I was trying to look through the contract quickly to see, where our break point is. I don't know if we can.
I'm trying to find it.
I'm thinking it's not a problem, so that's my guess.
I don't think it would be either.
I don't either. I don't.
The only modification I would ask maybe, Vice Mayor, is if we could say that we are still going to give them the opportunity for that full 5-year renewal term, but it's going to be 1 year with 4
Yeah.
one-year
Was it
renewals.
5 or 3?
It was 5 total, so
5 total?
the original
Right, 3
contract
and
said the
2.
first 3-year term and then 2 1-year renewals.
Right.
So we'll give them a yearly,
For
And
5
we'll have to
years,
update
yeah.
each year.
at our discretion.
I'm going to guess that they would, I can't speak for them, that they would be amenable to that. So I have a motion on the floor,
Sure, I'll
which
modify it for what,
which is to be renewed on an annual basis.
For the total of 5 years.
Mayor?
Up 5 years, yes.
I found in section 3B for term and termination, it says termination by city, termination without cause. City may terminate this agreement at any time upon 15 days prior written notice, provided, however, that any work order entered into shall survive the termination under the terms of this agreement until the conclusion of the work order, unless such work order is specifically terminated. City may terminate any incomplete work order at any time and for any or no reason upon written notice to the supplier. In the event of such termination, supplier shall immediately cease all work in connection with the applicable work order. And it finishes out that sentence.
Yeah, I'm familiar with
So
it.
in my mind, that, for this type of contract, that would be the month that they're working in.
Correct.
Right, because we pay them monthly. So I think we could terminate it at any time. So next year, when we bring the contract back for the renewal, if you're not happy, you want to go in a different direction, I think with 15 days.
My question was more geared to the personnel and the liaison that we have in terms of continuity of support and effort there, which is obviously a key to success with lobbying and in Tallahassee in particular. But so I have a motion and a second. I will put this out to the public if there are any members of the public that would like to comment on this issue regarding our lobbyist. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close that. Any final discussion? I think everybody's, yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're going to have to amend that contract to include this now, correct?
It'll be a new contract. We don't have a contract right now.
Or it'll be in the new contract?
Yes. The
It'll
new-
be a
I mean, I don't want it to slip away.
No, the new
In other
contract will
words.
be written according to the motion
Right.
that was made today.
Yeah, that's what I want to make sure of, because
Great.
I understand we can terminate.
Okay, I'm not clear. So
Yeah.
is it a 5-year contract?
It's a 1-year contract
Contract.
with 4 1-year renewals.
Okay,
That's how it was amended.
so we're amending it. Okay, got it.
I would-
Sure, because we went back and forth a little bit, but.
Yep, and then
yeah.
food for thought, with 15 days' notice, you can fire whenever you want, right?
Correct.
Cool.
And I'll have to go back to them, and it's a flat fee for the full 5 years. There isn't an escalator in this contract. So I'll make sure that they're okay with that 1 year at a time. But,
And if they're not, we'll find someone else.
yes, sir.
Okay, any additional discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Marcus, if you'd go down to number 15 for us now.
Resolution 2024-XX approving guaranteed maximum price contract amendment to the construction service contract for Fire Station 25.
Mayor, City Council, while Mr. Gibo is getting ready to come to the podium, Just wanted to remind you that this has been on the city's capital improvement plan for a couple of years, but we're leveraging the contract that is doing Fire Station 22 and 26, a little bit of cost savings, purchasing the same material at the same time. So that's why it's here on your agenda today. But this has been needed for the last couple years.
Good evening, Council. Mayor Alphen. On the first, the Council approved the guaranteed maximum price contract amendments for both Fire Station 22 and Fire Station 26. Initially, we represented back in January the scope of this project, and this is for the guaranteed maximum price amendment for the modifications and improvements to Fire Station 25.
Some of the advantages to doing this right now is essentially one of the biggest parts is replacing the front bay doors at Station 25. We've had several instances where they stop working and it creates an extension of our response time. And in this specific emergency time, it can be a real problem for an individual call. The new doors would be able to be opened by hand. The current doors are not. We had a situation for a while where we couldn't secure springs for the doors, just, you know, the kind of supply chain issues that we've been seeing. But we're going to experience some savings associated with when these doors are installed in our new stations. They're also going to be installed at Station 25.
Makes sense. Any questions from city council members?
Economies of scale.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Any comment from the public? Seeing nobody, back to the dais.
I'll move to approve the resolution approving the guaranteed maximum price contract amendment to the.
Motion from Councilman Clufus.
I'll second.
A second from Councilman Gambaro. Any final comment, discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcus, we're down to number 16, which is Flagler Village.
Resolution 2024-XX approving Flagler Village Phase 2 Final Plat Application 5894.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and council members. This is the final plat for Flagler Village. It's Phase 2. Phase 1 was approved by City Council in May, and there was a presentation in your package. I'm happy to bring it up and go over it. All the infrastructure for the project has been completed. This is just platting the last 118 lots of the 227 lot subdivision.
Anybody want to see a picture? Anybody need, no?
Need not.
Councilman, you good? Okay. So we don't need a presentation. Any other change of any kind?
No, it's
Any
just
questions?
Phase 2 of the plat.
Okay. If there are no questions.
Sorry, I did have one.
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed in the summary that this says it's a replat. Why does it reference it as a replat? So in the first sentence, in the background of the cover page of this agenda item, it says the application submitted by the applicant proposes to replat and subdivide.
It's a replat of the undeveloped phases of Phase 1. So in Phase 1, these are future development tracks, FD1 through 6. There's 6 tracks that were approved in Phase 1. So now when they come in as Phase 2, it's replatting those future development tracks. So those are no longer FD1, FD2, FD3, FD4. They're literally just lots, 1 through 118.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any members of the public care to comment? No?
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilman Clufus to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I have a second from Councilwoman Pontieri. Is there any other discussion?
It's quasi-judicial.
Have you had any ex parte communication?
None.
None of us had any ex parte communication. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And I guess our final resolution is number 17, Marcus.
The one we've been waiting all day for.
Resolution 2024-XX approving guaranteed maximum price contract amendment to the construction service contract for the Maintenance Operations Center.
Mayor and City Council, while Mr. Gibo is getting started again, I just want to remind you that this has been an ongoing strategic action plan priority since 2017. It originated as the Public Works Facility and now has moved to the Maintenance Operations Center. So really kind of historic moment here that we're getting to a crossroads of actually able to put our foot on this piece of property and start with some site improvements, and Mr. Gibo's ready.
Good evening, Council. Mayor Alphen, Eric Gibo, architect with the Stormwater and Engineering Department. And in the back, we have Marco Migliaro with Pond. He is the architect of record on the MOC. And we are pleased to present to Council an update on the progress of the Maintenance Operations Center and to present the MOC infrastructure site work guaranteed maximum price for approval. The Maintenance Operations Center project has been a top priority for the City Council for several years. Major actions have been completed, such as finalizing a master plan that was modified as part of the city's conservation easement release, and to coordinate the site layout and stormwater pond with the Matanzas West expansion. Design services and construction management services were contracted, and design was completed for Phase 1 in August of this year. The city obtained the necessary property for the project, and the permits are underway. The focus of this presentation today will be to discuss the proposed phases of the project and to request approval of the guaranteed maximum price for the site work and infrastructure. The master plan for the Maintenance Operations Center consolidates public works, utility, and stormwater and engineering into a single location and is designed to meet the long-range needs of the city by providing areas on the site for future expansion of parking and buildings. The initial construction phase of the Maintenance Operations Center involved the clearing of a central portion of the site to allow for the stockpiling of import fill from the London Waterway project. The 240,000 cubic yards of fill brought onto the site accounts for all of the fill required for the project, saving more than $1.75 million in import fill costs. The transfer of fill was completed in August of this year. Phase 1 of the MOC, the focus of this presentation, involves the site development of the southern portion of the parcel, which includes the clearing of the site, construction of site utilities, stormwater system, technology infrastructure, grading and pavement base materials, site lighting, and FPL TECO service connections. Phase 1 will continue with the construction of the fleet maintenance building, identified as Phase 1A. With this project, the maintenance facility will be constructed and the site further developed with the landscaping, irrigation, site fencing, and utility connections to serve the building. The final component of Phase 1 is the construction of the fuel depot and vehicle wash facilities, identified as Phases 1B and 1C respectively. The future Phase 2 will be the final component and consists of the construction of the administration building, which, as mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, will consolidate the various city service departments into a single facility. This project will also complete the connection to Matanzas Woods Parkway and the needed power, water, and technology infrastructure loop from PV grade in support of the western expansion. Upon approval of the GMP, Gilbane Building Company can mobilize on-site in January of 2025 with construction completion in the fall of 2025. Phase 1A, the fleet building, can begin upon council approval of the GMP in October of next year with completion at the beginning of 2027. Phase 1B and 1C, the fuel and fleet wash facilities, will potentially have concurrent schedules with construction beginning at the end of 2027 and completing late summer of 2028. The funding for the site work project will come from fiscal year 25 and 26 capital projects. Council actions are for the approval of the guaranteed maximum price contract amendment for Phase 1 site work with Gilbane Building Company in the amount of $11,994,644 and a construction contingency of $640,191 to cover unforeseen issues related to fees and permit costs. Thank you. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions?
I have a few. Sorry, Mayor.
You want to go?
First of all, what is the solar that we're going to be using on this facility?
We will be installing solar on the fleet building.
Okay. In the backup documents, there's a cost summary for the GMP proposal. And it looks like, you know, they've got it says bid package description, material testing, site electrical, and then it's got a cost per acre of each one of those things and a couple other things. And then if you go below, it says, and then there's a subtotal there, I'm sorry, then you go below, it says total trade cost subtotal. It says GBC staffing, GBC field office support, and then you're looking at, I mean, one of these is $16,590 per acre. It's pretty hefty, right? I guess my question is, and there's a number of things listed there, are those not worked into the bid package items? Those are additional?
No, those would be part of the breakdown of the bid.
Okay,
So those are
got
part
it.
of the
That's what, I was
GMP.
very unclear about
Yes.
that. Okay. And is that the same, my other question though too was, are we paying for the general liability for the construction of this project? Or is the contractor not carrying their own insurance for it?
Yeah, that first page there, those are the construction manager's general overhead costs, and part of their contract, they do bill us for their time and overhead. And I don't think that per acre goes all the way down that whole sheet. I think that was only for the above items. Down below, they have staffing hours and whatnot, that they came up with those dollars when they need, superintendents and other people on site managing those particular projects, and then admin staff back in Jacksonville that process to pay apps and contracts and those sorts of things. So that's really the overhead. They provide all the backup, and they're billing us like an hourly basis. That's their guesstimate. They won't exceed those numbers. It's part of their total GMP cost, though.
Okay, and then my other question regarding the liability insurance and the builder's risk insurance, do they not just generally carry their own insurance for their jobs? Why is that something the city is paying for?
Well, it would be built into any contractor's bid for it. They make their subs carry their own.
Right.
But overall, for them to carry it as the construction manager, they charge us separately for that. We're going to pay for it one way or another, so that's just their cost. They're showing what that actual cost is for that insurance, provide insurance on this project.
That's specific to this project.
Yeah, like when we do a hard bid on a project, we say you have to have these insurance and these bonds, and they just roll it into general conditions as part of their bid to the city. On this one, they're breaking down and they're showing us every single cost that they have and providing the backup to us.
I guess I'm struggling because the way that, I do a lot of construction defect work, right? So the builders that I sue, they're already carrying their own general liability insurance. They don't charge my clients a line item to insure their house that they're building, in other words. So, I mean, there may be an overall increase to the bottom line, right? But
we usually ask to be as a named additional insured on those policies, and we set specific limits for them to carry.
Got it. So to have us named as an additional insured, okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Thank you.
No, I started talking about this 8 years ago, and I'm proud that we're finally going to see construction, and way to go.
So again, I had the chance to stand with Matt and the two maintenance bays that we have. How many maintenance bays will these facilities provide?
Marco, we'll pull up our architect of record here.
So, going off the top. Can you come up here so that the public can hear you, please?
Close up the floor plan. Yeah, I don't have a floor plan.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought we had a floor plan. So if I remember correctly, we've got large format bays on the one side and then smaller vehicle bays on the other side. And we have 6 large vehicle maintenance bays on the left side with them welding bays and also a truck wash, fire trucks wash as well on the side for maintenance. And then on the small truck side bay, we have an additional 6 bays on that side as well for any of the smaller vehicles. 4 of those dedicated more to like pickup trucks and things like that, and then the last 2 for smaller vehicles and such.
So how many total bays is it?
Total, then you're talking about 12 maintenance bays in total.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Matt, that's a heck of an improvement. So, all right, thank you, sir. No more questions.
Yes, okay. I'll open up for any questions from the public. I don't know if we have any more public here right now, but I'll close public comment. Any additional discussion on the dais? Questions? Motion?
I'll move for approval.
Councilman Clufus
I'll
has made a motion to approve. Councilman Guerrero has seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
The motion passes unanimously.
All right, we'll now move to the consent agenda. Council members, are there any particular items in the consent agenda you'd like to call out to discuss?
Mr. Mayor, there's one sole source.
Purchase.
Yeah, there's one sole source purchase.
Yep.
Well, let me get to it.
That comes after the consent agenda.
Yeah. That's down at the end of the agenda.
Okay.
So I'm just doing the consent now. We'll get there.
Okay.
I have a couple
But
just
go ahead,
questions. On agenda item 19, which is Information Technology Department, this
I read
is
that one.
purchase for NeoGov.
Backup internet.
Yeah, it says the 1-year contract is 38,000, but then the total we're approving is 267. So are we just approving multiple years and that's why it was presented like this?
Did you say 18, number 18?
19.
Oh, 19, oh, I'm sorry.
Doug's approaching the podium.
Gotcha. Yeah, I thought you was, I'm sorry, I thought you meant 18.
Because it's a little unclear as to whether, because it says 1 year at 38,000, but then there's obviously a larger amount.
Correct, because you're approving the contract, so it's the whole contract amount, so it's the 3-year contract.
3-year contract,
Yes,
and it's,
ma'am.
but again, that doesn't add up.
3
So,
times 38, yeah.
that doesn't add up. So again, if we're approving a 3-year contract at $38,000 a year, why is the total 267,000? That should be about 120.
Right, I didn't bring it up with me. I know additional years, the cost went up. And
Okay.
I'm not sure, I don't remember if it was a 3-year or a 5-year contract.
It's a 5-year.
5-year.
It's a 5-year.
That would do it.
Okay. And the price does go up significantly.
Yes, ma'am.
I just take a little bit of pause. I mean, is there a reason why because 38, it goes up to 59,000 by year 5. That's a lot of money. That's
Yeah,
quite an increase.
They actually gave us a deal on the earlier years to try to make us a customer, so it was actually a lower cost than initially it had.
Oh, this is one of those cable bundle packages where they get you.
Discount up front.
Yeah, they get you, and then all of a sudden you don't have ESPN in the morning
That's
and they
right.
got you hooked, okay?
iPhone, baby.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Doug. Appreciate it.
The reason I cut the cord and no longer do it.
And then for 24 and 25, sorry.
Water meters.
24 is a contract with, it looks like a Clearwater Solutions LLC. Is the reference to Clearwater someone who's not local, or is that Clearwater, like clear water? I only asked to make sure we're not paying anything extra for those who are not local to us.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. That one there, I believe they're out of Ocala, I think, but I'm not 100% sure, but I can find out. But this is for the installation of water meters, if we need them.
Okay,
So there's a very strong possibility, there's a strong likelihood that we may not even have to use this company. This is only for, if we get behind on the installations, we can engage them and they can come in and get us caught up.
right, so that's what I was concerned with, as long as we're not paying anything extra, because we are paying for labor for an out-of-town company to come in and install these meters.
Yes, yep.
And then, I guess, so I saw actually 3 different items on the consent for meters specifically. Is there no company that can provide all of these related services at a discount to us rather than us going to 3 different providers?
Are you talking about Empire, the sole source, or am I looking?
Yeah, that was one of them.
that was
That's
my
25. Yeah.
Empire, yes. Well, let me take you back a little bit. Originally, our original contract, we had a company that was selling us meters, and I can't remember what year, I'm going to say about 2000 and a couple of years ago. They were having we were having problems with lead times. And that kind of caused us another problem with trying to keep up with purchasing these meters to install them. So we found another company, Empire, that actually had another meter, and it turns out to be a little bit better. They do a better job with keeping inventory on their shelves. So if we need anything, regardless of what size it is, we can just call them up and get them installed rather than just getting further behind. So that was the reason why we chose to engage into this company. And not only that, the meter themselves seem to work a little bit better in meter pits that happen to get flooded. It works much better. They don't fail on us, which is another thing. The other thing is they are some of the larger meters are stainless. It's called Octave, but they're stainless steel as opposed to epoxy coated on the inside, which, in our opinion, will last a lot longer.
Okay, thank you, Peter, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And that was all the questions I had.
That's it? Other questions on the consent? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Hold on, let me just, okay,
There's
make the
nobody
motion.
in the public.
I know, but I got to do it anyway. So I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second for Councilman Clufus. Before we vote, I'll open this up to the public. There are no members of the public to comment, so back to the dais. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed?
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We now move to final public participation. I don't see any members of the public, so we'll move through public participation, and then we'll move down to discussion by City Council of matters not on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
If I may. I would like to ask for council's consent to bring an agenda item to the next meeting, and it's to have a discussion. We'll vote on it or discuss it, decide to move forward if it makes sense. But I've been approached by several members, several community groups about, and in the vein of public safety, looking at what the options are of putting what they call a safe haven baby box within our fire stations.
There has been
some discussion, so.
Lauren will have more info on that.
And so I would just, I think it's worth discussing, and I would just ask the council if they would.
You have consensus, so if you would add that to agenda. But staff, will you need some documents, a program, a plan, some details?
Mayor, if I can, the organization, the Knights of Columbus, has approached the city.
Okay.
We can get together some information to schedule a future workshop to give you that.
Just something so that the discussion is valuable.
Yes, there's an
Okay.
agreement in place, some construction modifications that would need to have, and we'll bring that to you.
Okay, very good. All right, I think that's it.
And I wanted to thank the team, the staff as a whole. I think we're all engaged heavily this weekend, and for the DPW team for putting up with me when making phone calls, when I got frantic phone calls from our citizens about power lines being down over their car, they couldn't get their families out, that kind of stuff. What a great team effort, and I'm proud to be part of this team, and it was really awesome to watch. So thank you to everybody that made that happen.
Nicely said. I think that we all agree and confirm what you said, so nicely said. Good.
I'd say one hell of a job, and for brevity, that's all I've got.
I have nothing.
City manager.
I have a couple.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yep.
I definitely echo Councilman Gambaro's comments. Staff, top-notch, awesome job. Thank you so much. That's an understatement of gratitude. Again, for brevity. So we had, unfortunately, a little girl hit on her bicycle at Indian Trails, I think 2 Saturdays ago. And from what I understand, it's a result of just, we don't have Ralph Carter Park right now, right? So we've got a ton of people out there. It's a zoo on a Saturday. What are we doing for traffic pattern and to ensure, well, we can't ensure anything, but to try to prevent that from happening again?
Sure, thank you, Councilwoman Pontieri. Our staff, Public Works, Parks, Maintenance, Engineering, they've worked together. Tomorrow, signs will go up at the sports complex directing traffic only one way. So they will have to turn in off of Belterre, and then they would exit one way by the church. Those signs will go up, and then message boards are going to go up as well as we're doing communication to the sports groups, the Sports Alliance members, to notify their parents of this change. Then we've partnered with the Flagler County Sheriff's Office. They'll also be going out there and issuing extra patrols and warnings to make sure no one's parking along the where the signage says no parking, and cars are moving effectively. So it's a little bit of a transition plan as parents get used to that, but for the safety of all parties involved, those signs will go up tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh, today, even better.
Perfect.
8:30 tomorrow.
Thank
Yes.
you. So I appreciate Flagler County Sheriff's Office going out there during the transitionary period. I would like to maybe speak with them on a more long-term basis about what we can do for our leagues as far as the hourly rate goes. I understand they normally charge $75 an hour, and some of our leagues really can't afford that every Saturday or every game day. So I would like to just get some communications going on what we can do in that regard.
So there is a little bit of challenge there because the rates are negotiated between the sheriff's office and the union. So I'm not sure how discounts or other programs could apply whenever there's collective bargaining agreements in place.
Okay, well, let's start the conversation. And then, kind of related, I would like to get consensus from council to have a workshop on having an ordinance preventing loading and unloading of people when you are not in a loading and unloading zone. Example, when parents park on the side of the road to pick up their kids at random places. It's very dangerous. Kids are crossing the road. They're stopping up traffic. You've got, in some neighborhoods, I mean, I've seen 10 and 15 cars parked on the other side of the road from where kids are dropped off at a bus stop. I can tell you I have cringed. As soon as that little bus stop sign gets folded into the bus, cars whoop around it, and one of those kids is going to get hit. That, and also the residents don't deserve to have 15 cars lined up on the side of the road. So I understand there's been a little bit of correspondence between the staff, our council, our attorney, and Flagler County Sheriff's Office about what we can and cannot do, but I want to see that come before us as a workshop, and I'd ask for consensus on that.
Okay. Yep, yeah, consensus, okay. Go with that.
All right, and that's all I have.
Do you need to make another, thank you. Do you need to make a comment on sole source, or we're finished with that discussion?
No, Mayor, as a part of your packet, there is the emergency and sole source purchases. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Council? Council? Comment?
No comment at this time.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, guys, I do have one alibi. City Manager, could you, I know you sent me an update on the construction on Rimfire. It's been on everybody's mind, but could you just outline the plan going forward, and then maybe touch on Royal Palms? It'll commence, I think, right after Rimfire is completed.
Yes, I'm going to ask Carl to come up and address that specifically, but the road resurfacing project is delayed a week because we asked them not to work last week during Hurricane Milton efforts. So Carl, can you just explain the?
Yeah, so right now, this week, there'll be continuing day operation for paving heading towards Rimfire School. Come Sunday night, they'll start working nights here on out to finish up Rimfire Drive by the school, and then Royal Palms will be all done at night.
And that would start the following week, or?
It should start Sunday night, assuming weather holds true. You know, that's the current plan. It'll start Sunday night.
Okay, and I would just ask that the signs that go up reflect the new update going forward. And I'm not going to name the company's name, but how they started out was a mess and completely underwhelming. But you know, I look forward to see how they do going forward on Royal Palms.
Yeah, it's been a struggle with MOT and dealing with
the
traffic.
Management of traffic, right?
Yes, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes. All right, so
and the
Carl's going to
construction.
fix that.
And the construction, because they started like on one side and the other, so you were actually weaving. There wasn't just one side being worked on. I thought that was a little bit out of sorts, so thank you. Thank you.
And
City
Mayor,
Manager.
I'm sorry, I just had a couple more items. I know you're trying to get out of here. I also want to thank staff for our efforts on recovery of and response of Hurricane Milton. Our staff weathered the storm, many of them staying overnight, and then really full court press on cleaning up, and our city looks beautiful right now, and it's a testament to our team. And then also, Mayor, City Council, we're receiving rapid communications from our attorney who's representing us on the active litigation between the Allen Lowe case. It would be very beneficial to have an executive session so that you could give myself some direction on how you'd like to proceed in that case. I know that we're under some timelines, so I'm just, looking for some sort of direction on how to proceed in that case.
My understanding is you had a conversation this morning with an attorney from Gray Robinson who made a recommendation or a suggestion.
Yes.
I'm gonna raise a flag here, point of order, with regards to any type of confidential settlement communications and advice from counsel that should be done in a shade meeting. So I just want to make sure we don't get into those waters.
Do you want to make a recommendation on a day and time?
Mr. Duffy, are we allowed to have one this week? What would be the procedure for that?
We would need to have one within a week's notice. So I will reach out to schedule a shade meeting, but we'll put a.
So I'm a little confused here. Mr. Lowe released that letter from his attorney to us.
The client.
Right, and we are the client. I don't know why we need to go into the shade if we can just basically accept the offer that they're giving us here.
Because we're in a public setting and it's
Yes,
a
but
confidential
this has been
settlement
a very-
offer.
This has been a very, very public sort of thing with this amendment.
That doesn't matter though, Vice Mayor.
Why not? I mean, there's nothing that requires us to go in the shade. If we can reach a consensus.
Because you're asking that would be the same thing. We just met with our attorney on the splash pad.
Right.
So if we had taken his recommendations and discussed them in a public setting, that would have been wholly inappropriate. This is the same thing. We need to discuss any settlement resolution to this case in the shade, and then if we come to a decision in that shade meeting, then obviously, not even the resolution could potentially become public. So in the legal world, most settlement agreements are confidential. So even if we were to come to a settlement agreement, presumably, much of that would be confidential. Now, depending on the ultimate outcome of the case, you could kind of glean what some of those terms may be, but it's still a confidential settlement agreement.
But unlike the splash pad, which involves money, lawsuits, damages, this is more of a language issue, a language of the amendment on the ballot, which the majority of us has already said is kind of deceptive and dishonest and doesn't really give the public, a view of what they're voting for.
I want to be very clear about that because I do not think this language is deceptive. Do I think the language could be improved? Yes, I do.
Right.
Do I think that it is deceptive? I do not. So I want to make my position very clear. But my point is, this is the paper that you continue to point at says at the top, confidential settlement communication.
It does.
That needs to be discussed in the shade.
So can you,
That confidential letter was released by the plaintiff to this council, which now probably makes it part of the public record.
but there's still a discussion on our part. So can you get this done quick so we can have this
Yeah,
discussion?
we can schedule, I will try to get everyone scheduled and have a shade meeting within 7 days.
How quick?
7 days.
How
With the
about
notice.
3 days? How about 2 days?
We
Why
have
wait a
notice,
week?
Everybody's available.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
I mean, let's
all
try to
happy
get
to
this
do it
done.
as soon as possible.
Let's try to
Yes.
get this done
Okay.
within 48 hours.
Got it.
Not a week.
Mr. Danko, I share your concerns. There are notice requirements I'm trying to fall under, so I will try to make sure that we fall under those notice requirements and we can do the shade.
Requirements?
Usually you're supposed to give, when we meet, we're supposed to give a week's notice. Now, under the situation, there could be an argument that this is an emergency
Yes.
base, so I can try to work around that.
Right,
But
because we have a court date, I think it's on the 24th or 21st, I'm not sure which.
A response is due by the 21st.
By the 21st.
Okay.
So that's next week.
Okay.
So to get this done in the next 24, 48 hours, I think would be in our advantage. We can do a Zoom shade meeting. I'm not opposed to that. but I think we need to get this done. We need to get this,
Okay.
put
Attorney
behind
has,
us.
council has his direction, and city manager.
And my other question is, should we be talking to Mr. Duffy, or should we be talking to Gray Robinson? Because those are the folks we hired.
Correct. It would be, Ms. Cruz is our attorney representing us in this
So that
matter.
is the person you would have to ask for a shade meeting, because I understand your law firm has withdrawn from defending this case.
So in order for a shade meeting, it's usually your city attorney who calls the shade meeting.
Right, but you've withdrawn from it.
Except
Mr.
for the
King,
organization
can I
of the
finish,
meeting.
and then I can try to answer your question? So usually it's, like we did for the splash pad case, is that working with Gray Robinson on that case, we discussed, and they said, hey, we need to call a shade meeting. So that's what I called a shade meeting for that particular case.
Well, then I would like to at least get the consensus that we get this done quickly. Next 48 hours or so would be perfect, that we not drag this out, we not slow walk it, we don't wait a week or let this thing just,
All right, we have consensus. Everyone would like to do it at the earliest legal opportunity.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All right, we are adjourned.
Is that a record?